Part 12. The trio Aaron Jensen, Gregory Jensen, and Kelly Jensen waited in front of the Larson family's residence for a long time. Still, they hadn't managed to meet anyone. Upon returning home, Kelly Jensen was severely lectured by her grandpa and was even grounded for a whole week. Cooped up at home, Kelly Jensen was utterly bored. She couldn't help but scold Finn Taylor 1,000 times over in her heart. He's just a useless matrilocal son-in-law, so why did Grandpa and Gregory have to scold me? Am I not even better than that piece of trash? After only the first day of being grounded, Kelly Jensen was so bored that she decided to go out of her house. She was going to have some fun. That very day, Linda James had taken the initiative to approach Finn Taylor at home. In fact, she even appeared a little fearful of him. This would have been an impossible sight in the past. Of course, the only reason for this change was the incident with Frida Cameron. The old lady had been killed right in front of Linda James's eyes. Even though some time had passed since then, Linda James couldn't help but shiver in fear when she thought about it. Never in her life would she have expected Finn Taylor, the one whom she had bullied for 3 years, to be someone like that. "What's up, Mom? My mom is celebrating her birthday next month, and I'm going back to my hometown. I hope that you'll go with me." In the past, Linda James would always attend her mother's birthday celebrations along with her husband and daughter. However, she had never brought Finn Taylor along. She simply felt that it would be an embarrassment to bring a piece of trash along previously, but things were different now. "Next month, all right," Finn Taylor readily agreed. There had been many feuds and grudges between Finn Taylor and Linda James in the past, but the former hadn't gone after the latter when he revealed his identity. He was ready to put the past behind him. That was just how he was. Soon after that, Finn Taylor headed out. Recently, Andre Cavill had opened a new bar in San Francisco and had invited Finn Taylor. Thinking about Andre Cavill, the latter had the urge to punch him in the face. "If not for the fact that I was trying to save him, I never would have gone to La Feria Club. If I had never gone to La Feria Club, I never would have gotten into a cold war with my wife. Thankfully, we've made up, and our relationship is as good as it can be now. Otherwise, it's very likely I would have killed Andre Cavill." When he arrived at the bar, he realized that it had been named Gentle Breeze. Finn Taylor nearly vomited blood. Why would you give such a name to somewhere as messy as this? Are you sure you'll get any customers? Finn Taylor stopped his car and headed in. This car was none other than the Ferrari that Kimberly Gold had given him some time ago. It wasn't especially expensive, costing only slightly over $100,000. But given where he was, it was already considered a high-end car. After all, the cars around here usually cost just a couple thousand. It was quite unusual to spot a luxurious car in the area. On Kelly Jensen's side, she was frustrated because she realized that her grandpa had confiscated her key. In fact, her grandpa had even frozen all her assets and bank accounts. This was the way Aaron Jensen was warning and punishing his granddaughter. Kelly Jensen had been pampered and spoiled since a young age. Nobody ever stopped her from doing whatever she wanted, but she had gotten into deep trouble this time. Aaron Jensen wanted to punish her so that she would realize just how huge of a mistake she had made. "How am I supposed to go out to have fun without a car or any money?" Kelly Jensen huffed as she flipped through the contacts on her phone. A name popped up: Frank Lucas. Wait a minute, Kelly Jensen sent a short message to him: "Are you there?" It didn't even take seconds before she received her reply: "Of course. What's up, babe? Are you feeling unwell? Why are you looking for me, babe?" Kelly Jensen rolled her eyes when she saw the messages he had sent. How disgusting. "I only asked if he was there, but he said so much. He'd probably even be willing to eat my shit. Let's go out and have some fun." She sent him her location. This thrilled Frank Lucas. He was the young master of the Lucas family. Although they were a second-tier family in San Francisco, they were still less prominent than the Jensen family. As such, he hadn't made any progress even after chasing Kelly Jensen for months. He had never expected her to take the initiative to look for him. His heart leapt, and his hands trembled. He quickly hopped into his Audi and drove all the way to Kelly Jensen's house. When he arrived, he even personally handed the milk tea that he had bought for her and opened the passenger's seat door too. Although Kelly Jensen faked a smile, she was cursing at Frank Lucas in her heart. "You're such a bootlicker. Do you think you're worthy of me? Why don't you look in the mirror and think about whether you're good enough for me? Where are we going?" After hopping into the car, Kelly Jensen pretended to be gentle and caring, even asking for the other's opinion. It was as though she would let him take the lead. Of course, that excited Frank Lucas even more. "Let me think. Oh right, A new bar just opened in San Francisco. I think it's called Gentle Breeze. Do you want to check it out? Kelly Jensen rolled her eyes inwardly. What kind of stupid name is that? Yet, her face was plastered with a smile. Seeing her nod in agreement, Frank Lucas was on cloud nine. As long as I bring her for a drink and get her drunk, I will have my chance. Very quickly, the pair arrived at the bar. Frank Lucas had initially been rather excited, but Kelly Jensen's gaze had been glued to the Ferrari beside his car as soon as she got out of his. Any man would feel uneasy when the woman he was with paid more attention to other men. It's just a Ferrari. What's there to see? Frank Lucas uttered out of frustration. SoundStories audiobooks. But that was met with Kelly Jensen's ridicule. Just a Ferrari. Where's your Ferrari then? After being mocked by Kelly Jensen, Frank Lucas was annoyed. He kicked the Ferrari viciously. Oh, you're so incapable, but you have quite a fiery temper. Frank Lucas, smash this Ferrari if you're capable. Otherwise, you're not even a man to me. Because she had already gone so far, Frank Lucas was in a frenzy. If I don't do anything today, Kelly Jensen will mock me for the rest of my life. He picked up a piece of cement and smashed it against the Ferrari's side mirrors. Don't just smash that mirror. What about the windscreen? Kelly Jensen fanned the flames, not afraid of kicking up a huge fuss. Not only did she not stop her friend from smashing the car, but she was even egging him on. In for a penny, in for a pound. Frank Lucas was frantic, and he quickly got himself a fire extinguisher and viciously threw it against the Ferrari's windscreen. At the very same time, Finn Taylor was drinking in his private room along with Andre Cavill. Just then, a young boy shoved the door open. Andre Cavill frowned. How could this kid be so insensible? This is the first time I'm drinking with Master Peregrine, yet my subordinate has done such a thing. It will surely leave a bad impression on Master Peregrine. Get out. Andre Cavill didn't even spare that boy a glance before roaring those words out. However, Finn Taylor stopped him. What's the matter? The young boy was slightly nervous but still spilled the beans. Mr. Taylor, someone smashed your car. Huh, everyone in the room including Finn Taylor and Andre Cavill were taken aback. What is going on? I've come just to have a drink. I haven't offended anyone, so who would smash my car? I'll have a look. Andre Cavill stood up and was about to head out. However, Finn Taylor waved him off. Andre Cavill has just started his business. If we allow someone to stir trouble up now, others will only follow suit in the future. It would simply be better to resolve everything right there and then. Bring him here. His subordinates nodded and headed out immediately. Andre Cavill glanced at Finn Taylor awkwardly, not knowing whether to laugh or to cry. Master Peregrine, I really. Finn Taylor waved him off. Call me Finn. Don't expose my identity. Andre Cavill slapped himself viciously, realizing that he seemed to have done something wrong. At the bar entrance, Kelly Jensen had also joined in on smashing the car with her friend. Anyway, I'm not the one who started it all. If anything happens, Frank Lucas has to bear the responsibility. Right at that very moment, 40 to 50 men rushed out of the bar and surrounded the pair. Come with us. Our boss wants to meet you. Frank Lucas was shell-shocked. At that moment, even he felt slightly anxious. Ordinary folk wouldn't be able to afford a $100,000 luxury car. One has to have a background like father's. This had completely slipped his mind earlier. The concept of needing to pay for the consequences seemed rather frightening to him now. But what was done was done. He had no other choice but to trudge along and follow the men into the bar. However, Frank Lucas wasn't really that terrified. It's just a $100,000 car. That person is probably on the same level as my father. At the very worst, I could simply ask father to save me from this situation. That person will probably let me go on father's account. Of course, that was only Frank Lucas's own wishful thinking. Very quickly, Frank Lucas and Kelly Jensen entered the private room together. When Kelly Jensen saw that it was Finn Taylor sitting in the private room, she took a second glance. However, an idea suddenly ran through her mind. I can use Frank Lucas to my benefit. Hey, Finn Taylor, it's you. Shouldn't you be in the Larson family's house? It wouldn't be good if Yvette Larson finds out that you're here, don't you think? Finn Taylor was well known in San Francisco. He was the useless matrilocal son-in-law of San Francisco that everyone knew. Now that Kelly Jensen had even mentioned Yvette Larson, Frank Lucas was certain that the man in front of him was that very same piece of trash. The anxiety in Frank Lucas's heart now disappeared. Perhaps I would have been slightly afraid while facing someone else, but you're just a useless matrilocal son-in-law. Why should I be afraid of you? Frank Lucas walked over and picked up a glass of wine before saying, your car was in my way. My hand slipped and accidentally hit your car, so I'll punish myself by drinking this. We'll leave it at that then. With that, Frank Lucas downed the wine. He felt that this matter would be resolved just like that. Everyone present in the room was rather stunned by his shamelessness. After all, he had destroyed the Ferrari. How could he still say that he had merely hit it by accident? If it was so, would Finn Taylor have bothered about it at all? Oh, you hit it accidentally. Will it be a misunderstanding if I accidentally hit you now? Finn Taylor rubbed his fist, and 40 to 50 men rushed up in unison. Frank Lucas wasn't afraid of Finn Taylor, but he was overpowered. He was no match for the few dozen men. Finn Taylor, you'd better know your place. Who are you? Try hitting me and see what'll happen to you. Because he couldn't beat the other up, he tried to use his status. He thought that the other would definitely be afraid of him. Who are you to say that? The door opened just then, and Hunter Sullivan strolled in. He then poured 3 shots of liquor for himself before downing them all. Mr. Taylor, I'm sorry I was held up with something. I'll punish myself by drinking these 3 shots. Looking at how Hunter Sullivan had downed 3 consecutive shots while he only drank 1, Frank Lucas felt a little stunned. Hunter Sullivan of New York. Finn Taylor knows Hunter Sullivan. Besides, it seems as though they share a close relationship. Mr. Taylor, the car outside is yours, isn't it? It was this rascal who smashed it. Throw him into the sea as fish food. The moment Hunter Sullivan spoke up, Frank Lucas nearly wet his pants. If Finn Taylor had been the one who had said it, he simply would have scoffed and ignored the other. But it was Hunter Sullivan who had said it, and that meant much more. Hunter Sullivan was a man of his words. Frank Lucas immediately dropped down onto his knees. Mr. Sullivan, I was wrong. I'll pay you. I'll pay for a brand new car. Will that do? Hunter Sullivan rolled his eyes. You're begging the wrong person. The car isn't even mine. Besides, even I can't make decisions for Mr. Taylor. There's much more to it than what meets the eye. Doesn't that mean that Finn Taylor has a higher status than Hunter Sullivan? But that's ridiculous. However, Frank Lucas had to admit that Finn Taylor wasn't one to be trifled with now. SoundStories audiobooks. The former kowtowed on the ground repeatedly. Mr. Taylor, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Finn Taylor shrugged. You're begging the wrong person too. I didn't buy the car. Kimberly Gold gave me that car. Why don't you call Kimberly Gold and ask what the Gold family wants to do with you? Frank Lucas was about to vomit blood. All I did was smash a Ferrari. It's already incredulous that Hunter Sullivan has been brought into the picture, so why is the Gold family being involved too? Yet, Finn Taylor's attention wasn't on Frank Lucas but Kelly Jensen. Kelly Jensen, I think I just warned you a few days ago. Why are you provoking me again? Andre, get in touch with Aaron Jensen. I want the Jensen family to give me a satisfactory answer. As soon as he finished his sentence, Andre Cavill immediately went off to make the call. The one sitting next to Finn Taylor looked rather old, but Frank Lucas paid that man no heed. He had just learned of that man's name, Andre Cavill. This wasn't just any other man, he was getting popular in San Francisco too. Gentle Breeze was located in a prime location. Opening in such a prime location would definitely draw the ire of others. In fact, over 100 people had come to stir up trouble over the past few days. Rumor had it that the bar's boss Andre Cavill had dealt with those hundreds of people alone. From then on, nobody dared to kick up a fuss at Gentle Breeze anymore. But never had it crossed Frank Lucas's mind that even Andre Cavill knew Finn Taylor. In fact, they were even drinking together. This could only mean that they shared a close relationship. Finn Taylor's tone sounded much more like he was giving a command. It seems like the matter regarding Finn Taylor's identity is getting more complex. Frank Lucas hated Kelly Jensen's guts now. You bitch, you've ruined my life. If Finn Taylor pursues this matter, my family might very well be dragged down too. At the same time, Aaron Jensen was in his office. It had been a long time since he'd been back, but he had decided to return because of his granddaughter's incident. The first thing he did upon returning was to remove Kelly Jensen from all of her positions. Although she had never worked a single day in her life, she still had titles and positions in the company. This was simply for Aaron Jensen to give his precious granddaughter some pocket money. But his granddaughter had now committed such a grave mistake, so Aaron Jensen had to let her know just how serious this mistake was. Just then, his phone rang. It was an unknown caller. He was slightly annoyed and didn't mean to pick it up, but the stress had gotten to him, and he accidentally picked up the call instead. Aaron Jensen, right, come over to Gentle Breeze Bar. Your granddaughter is here. Bar, granddaughter. Aaron Jensen was stumped. Has this guy dialed the wrong number? But just then, the caller on the other end added, Mr. Taylor is only giving you 10 minutes. Mr. Taylor. Aaron Jensen's first thought was Finn Taylor. Why is Kelly Jensen getting involved with him again? Is Finn Taylor trying to get back at her now? Aaron Jensen was about to ask more, but the other had already hung up. He was left with no other choice. Because he had only 10 minutes, Aaron Jensen dared not waste any more time and quickly rushed over. Within the private room, Kelly Jensen was still indifferent. Finn Taylor, why are you looking at me? I wasn't the one who smashed your car, so what's the point in saying that to me? Finn Taylor chuckled. It's true that Kelly Jensen isn't the culprit. At the very most, she is an accomplice. Nothing will happen to her even if I want to pursue the matter, but her mistake was in trying to go against me. She had purposely said those words upon entering the room to misdirect Frank Lucas so that he would think that I'm nothing but a piece of trash. This had led to the situation intensifying. To be honest, she's the root of this whole problem. Oh, I remember now. You're the bitch who deliberately misled me. Do you really think that you won't have to take any responsibility at all for the car? Fuck, if you weren't there egging me on, I wouldn't have smashed the car. It's all your fault. Frank Lucas had offended Finn Taylor because of Kelly Jensen. Along with that, he had offended Andre Cavill, the Sullivan family of New York, and the Gold family all at once. There was no way he could bear such a huge responsibility. He hated Kelly Jensen to the core and how he wished he could kill her right there and then. The moment Aaron Jensen walked into the private room, he spotted Frank Lucas landing a blow on his granddaughter's face. Although he knew that his granddaughter had committed a grave mistake, she was still his granddaughter after all. His heart ached for her, and he shoved Frank Lucas away. What are you doing? Why are you hitting my granddaughter? Hitting your granddaughter? I'm going to kill her. Your granddaughter is really impressive. She offended Mr. Taylor, the Sullivan family of New York, the Gold family, Andre Cavill. Hearing the long list of people his granddaughter had offended, Aaron Jensen was filled with regret. I clearly grounded her for an entire week, so why couldn't she reflect on her mistakes? Great, she has completely ruined the entire Jensen family now. If I had known that this was going to happen, I would have grounded her forever. Aaron Jensen couldn't help but feel mentally exhausted. Mr. Taylor, I'll kowtow as my apology to you. Finn Taylor stood up without sparing him a glance. He wasn't at all interested in receiving kowtows. Frank Lucas, if you want to live, I'll give you a week's time to make the Jensen family bankrupt. Finn Taylor spoke coolly as he walked toward the door. Frank Lucas was overwhelmed with emotions. He had thought that he was doomed, yet he had gotten another chance at life at the very last minute. Frank Lucas kowtowed repeatedly, swearing allegiance to Finn Taylor and promising that he would definitely do as the latter said. As Hunter Sullivan followed his boss out, he asked, "Do you need me to step in?" Finn Taylor shook his head. "No need. It's time to train some subordinates. You can't always do things yourself." Finn Taylor had said that to Hunter Sullivan in front of everyone else. Before walking out, Andre Cavill even patted Frank Lucas on the shoulder. "Do your best. I hope that we'll have another chance to drink together in a week's time." Frank Lucas was still in a daze. What does Andre Cavill mean by that? Single quote. That could only mean that Andre Cavill was already part of Peregrine Halhe, held an extraordinary status now. Of course, there was nobody who felt more despair than Aaron Jensen at that moment. He could already see how everything was going to play out. The Jensen family is done for, and the cause of this was my own indecisiveness in regards to restraining my granddaughter. With no car, Finn Taylor decided to walk home. He hadn't walked far before someone appeared beside him, Tanya Kennedy. She was the niece of his mother and also his cousin. Long time no see, Finn. Finn Taylor wasn't very close to Tanya Kennedy. Every time she visited his family, she would only play with Donovan Taylor. Never once had she ever bothered about him, but she had now taken the initiative to approach him. Of course, Finn Taylor was no longer going to bear grudges over past events. He had already put the past behind him. "Why are you ignoring me? I came all the way here to look for you." Finn Taylor pointed at a cafe. "I'll treat you to a cup of coffee." Tanya Kennedy blinked flirtatiously. "This is your first time treating me to a drink." Finn Taylor rolled his eyes. "I really want her to scram. There was no way she would have bothered with me in the past, but things are different now." His father Jacob Taylor was dead, and so was his grandma, Frida Cameron. His mother Wendy Jensen was under house arrest, while his younger brother, Donovan Taylor, was imprisoned in the dark pool. He was the only one in the Taylor family that Tanya Kennedy could look for. As such, she finally thought of the cousin that she had never even interacted with before. Finn Taylor and Tanya Kennedy sat across from each other, and the latter started asking about his current life. You seem to be living well after leaving Chicago and coming to San Francisco. Finn Taylor shook his head. Not at all. Ask any random person on the street if they know Finn Taylor. They'll be sure to tell you that he's the Larson family's useless matrilocal son-in-law. In the past, Tanya Kennedy had her doubts about that. It was only when the Taylor family underwent such a drastic change that she realized that her cousin who she had always looked down on had simply been holding it in. Tanya Kennedy, stop beating around the bush. I'm sure you're here because my mom has something to tell me. Tanya Kennedy was Wendy Jensen's niece, and she shared the closest relationship with the latter amongst the entire family. Now that his mother was under house arrest, he was sure that his cousin had made the trip here only because of his mother's request. You're sharp. I won't keep it from you then. Tanya Kennedy then took out a photo and placed it in front of her cousin. The latter picked it up. It was a photo of an old monk. He's that monk from the Temple of Great Compassion. He was the one who told your grandmother about how she'd have a saint and a jinx as grandsons, but he suddenly disappeared. Finn Taylor's eyes reddened as he glanced at the man in the photo. It's all because of something this man said that I had to endure all that humiliation throughout the years. Revenge had once crossed Finn Taylor's mind, but he had never expected this man to vanish. Mr. Bruegel said that this had to be a plot and that someone must have tried to turn you two against each other. Andy hopes that you'll be able to find the old monk and the culprit behind this whole incident. My mother is indeed not just an ordinary figure. There's no way to keep her restrained, and her ambition is still there. Finn Taylor sneered. I'm afraid my mother has more to say, doesn't she? Yes, Andy said that the Taylor family is your family, Jacob Taylor's family, as well as Brian Taylor's family. But now, Benjamin Taylor has brought his two sons Julian Taylor and Jefferson Taylor into the Taylor family's residence. If you don't return home and fight for power over the family, you'll let your dad and grandpa down. Finn Taylor's eyes turned bloodshot as he exuded a murderous aura. Tanya Kennedy had expected all of this. It was all because of one name she had said, Brian Taylor. The Taylor family had always held him in great esteem. Before the age of 6, Finn Taylor had been treated rather fairly in the family. On the one hand, it was because that old monk had made the proclamation when he turned 6. On the other hand, it had more to do with Brian Taylor's death when Finn Taylor was 6. Perhaps if Brian Taylor hadn't passed on, that old monk never would have dared to make such a preposterous claim. Brian Taylor was the one who treated Finn Taylor the best in the entire family. He loved the latter more than his parents. However, that had all disappeared the year he turned 6. You'd better watch your words, Finn Taylor warned his cousin. Finn Taylor, I know what's your taboo. You don't want me to mention Brian Taylor, right? Snap. Finn Taylor reached out and grabbed his cousin's neck, not caring about the other's dignity or status. It didn't matter that she was his cousin. He was vicious enough to kill his own grandma, so what was a mere cousin to him? Finn Taylor, kill me now. You'd better kill me now. Once you kill me, you'll never know if your grandpa Brian Taylor is really dead. Snap. Tanya Kennedy's words saved her, and Finn Taylor let go immediately. What do you mean? Finn Taylor, what makes you so sure that your grandpa is dead? What does she mean? Finn Taylor was confused. Do you mean that grandpa isn't dead? Do you have any memory of the Taylor family holding a funeral for your grandpa? Finn Taylor's eyes were glued to the other. His breathing hastened, but he remained silent. In your mind, your father Jacob Taylor was probably crowned Master Peregrine all of a sudden one day, while your grandma, Frida Cameron, gained the real power in the family. Am I wrong? Finn Taylor didn't tear his eyes away from Tanya Kennedy. What is she trying to tell me? Could it be true that my grandpa is still alive? Finn Taylor, that's all I'm going to say. You'd better think it through. Does the Taylor family really mean nothing to you? What if the Taylor family crumbles one day? What if someone else takes over the Taylor family? How will you face your grandpa when he comes back then? With that said, Tanya Kennedy stood up and left. Finn Taylor was left there in a daze. Ellipsis. Chicago, the Taylor family. Maximus Bruegel glanced at Wendy Jensen. Did you ask Tanya to meet him in the end? Why can't I? He's part of the Taylor family, so it's his responsibility. But you know very well that the Taylor family has never given him anything. He shouldn't have to bear this responsibility. The Taylor family gave him life. Isn't that enough? Maximus Bruegel didn't want to argue with Wendy Jensen. In fact, he had never argued with a woman in his entire life since there was no point in doing so. As Maximus Bruegel walked out, he said blandly, "You're another Frida Cameron." Wendy Jensen smiled. I'm indeed another Frida Cameron. That's right, she had always thought of herself as different from Frida Cameron, but it now seemed like she was equally obsessed with power as Frida Cameron was. Once their power was being threatened, they had to find a way to get it back immediately. She was no different from Frida Cameron. Ellipsis. Finn Taylor stood up, heading home with thoughts circling in his mind. When he arrived home, he spotted his wife, who looked very down. What's wrong? Finn Taylor was curious. What's happened to Yvette? Why does she look so sullen? It's nothing much. I'm just stressed out over some matters in the company. Do you need my help? No need. I'm not completely useless. If this had happened in the past, Linda James would have lashed out at Finn Taylor a long time ago. But now that she knew of Finn Taylor's true identity, she didn't dare to make a peep. When Finn Taylor returned to his room, his mind was filled with all sorts of possibilities as he gazed at the photo of the old monk. Who is he? The next day, Winsdale Cafe in San Francisco. Yvette Larson had been waiting here for more than half an hour. The four men she was waiting for were business partners of the Larson Corporation. Because they had seen how the Larson family had started earning more due to their collaboration with the Sullivan family, their greed had gotten the better of them. They wanted a piece of the pie too. Of course, they never would have dared to do this in the past when Joseph Larson was still healthy and around. But now, Joseph Larson was in a coma. In fact, nobody knew if he would ever wake up. This emboldened the four families. Yvette Larson glanced at the time. It's been half an hour past the meeting time we had agreed on. It seems like they're deliberately putting me in a difficult spot, but that doesn't matter. As long as I can sign a contract with them, waiting even 2 hours won't be a problem for me. Eventually, the four old men finally arrived after more than 10 minutes. Yvette, we're old fogies now, so walking is quite inconvenient for us. Sorry for making you wait. You won't blame us for that, will you? Although Yvette Larson was annoyed inwardly, there was no way she could let that show. You must be joking, Grandpa Stephen. It's only right for me to wait for my elders. The man who had spoken was Stephen Turner, who held the highest status amongst the four. As long as she could convince him, she'd have convinced all four families. He was the one who had stirred up trouble to begin with. Grandpa Stephen, we've considered your request on profit sharing. Unfortunately, we can't agree to it at this moment. I'm sure you know that our family has just started our collaboration with the Sullivan family and has invested all our money in that project. We're really living from hand to mouth now. Why don't we do this? 3 years from now, when we break even and start making profits, we'll share the profits with the four of you. How's that? Yvette Larson's proposition was as good as nothing. 3 years could be extended into another 3 years, and another 3 it could be endless. To put it bluntly, the Larson family didn't want to let them have a single cent. Yvette, you're wrong there. I have to say something. When the Larson family needed help, our four families never abandoned you guys. Don't you think you guys aren't being very nice by leaving us behind now that you're making good money? Yvette Larson was clear that this was a black hole. I can't afford to give in this time. If I do, they'll only make even more ridiculous demands in the future again and again. Eventually, the Larson family will crumble at their hands. How about this, Grandpa Stephen? I'll give each of you a sum of money from my own pockets. I hope that you'll all be healthy, but I really have no say over the profit sharing. Stephen Turner waved her off. Yvette Larson, how could you be so insensible? When your grandpa fell ill, we rushed down to the hospital immediately. Our families have such long histories with each other. Now that the Larson family is making money yet leaving us behind, what will your grandpa think if he learns of it? Yvette Larson rolled her eyes inwardly. Would you guys dare to do this if grandpa was still healthy? You guys are just striking now that you see an opportunity. Sigh, it looks like we're old and don't matter anymore, Stephen Turner grumbled. He then turned to Yvette Larson. Yvette Larson, let's cancel our contracts since you don't care about us. Of course, you can try to keep us in other ways. With that, Stephen Turner slid his hand over to her. Feeling something amiss, Yvette Larson quickly retracted her hand. What do you mean, Grandpa Stephen? Nothing much. Don't you know the rules of our industry? Yvette Larson backed away as she glared at the other. Stephen Turner, you'd better watch your behavior. You claim that you're brothers with my grandpa, yet you dare to do such a thing now. Stephen Turner sneered. Why are you getting so worked up? Since I'm brothers with your grandpa, why don't you get your grandpa to stand up for you now? Yvette Larson, I'll be honest with you. I'm already prepared to forfeit all the money I threw into this project, but how much has the Larson family invested in it? Can you afford to lose that? Stephen Turner was right. The Larson family had invested all of their assets into the project with the Sullivan family, and it would take 3 years before they would break even. This meant that the Larson family would have to declare bankruptcy. It would be no big deal for Stephen Turner to stir up trouble by delaying the project. Have you thought it through? It's something everyone does, so you won't be the only one. Why are you so scared? No sooner had Stephen Turner finished his sentence than a glass of water was splashed on him. Yvette Larson was fuming, and she stomped off. I'm a decent lady, and I'm never going to stoop down to that level. She returned to the Larson Corporation, enraged. Just then, Quince Larson walked into her office. Yvette Larson, what do you mean by this? Grandpa Stephen just called me to say that you splashed a glass of water on him. Yvette Larson had already been infuriated, and Quince Larson's words only added to her displeasure. What? It's good enough that I didn't splash him with boiling water. Yvette Larson, watch your words. I'm the chairman in the office and at home. I'm the family head, so is this how you should be talking to me? What's wrong with my attitude? Do you know what that bast wanted to do to me? Quince Larson asked. What? Then, he thought of it. Oh, so that's why you're so angry. But why should you be so angry? That piece of trash at home doesn't even touch you, so shouldn't you be happy that someone else is willing to do it while benefiting the company? Splash. Yvette Larson picked up the glass of water on her desk and splashed it on Quince Larson. Yvette Larson, you're crazy. You're the crazy one, Quince. I quit. She shoved everything on her desk onto the ground. Then, she let out a deep breath before leaving. Quince Larson was still in a daze as he watched his cousin leave. What does she mean by this? Did she just quit? That woman has such a fiery temper. I just lectured her, and she quit. Besides, I didn't even say much. This happens in every industry. Why can't she do it if others can? The moment Yvette Larson walked out of the office building, she couldn't help but think that the air outside felt exceptionally fresh. Just then, she spotted Eleanor Larson walking toward her. Why are you here? Have you settled it with Stephen Turner? If you can't even deal with that, why don't you just resign? Eleanor Larson had already been humiliated because of that incident with Alexander Scott, and that frustrated her deeply. Yet, she had chosen to push all blame to Finn Taylor and Yvette Larson instead of reflecting on her own actions. Now that she spotted her cousin loitering at the building entrance instead of working, she saw her chance. She immediately mocked her cousin, yet what she got as a response was only Yvette Larson's sneer. Just wait to declare your bankruptcy. With that said, Yvette Larson turned to leave. Eleanor Larson was stumped. What does Yvette mean by that? She headed up to Quince Larson's office, only to see his face plastered with a wide smile. You look happy. Let me tell you something, Yvette Larson is gone. Eleanor Larson was taken aback. What do you mean? Yvette Larson tendered her resignation. Quince Larson had always been thinking about how to kick his cousin out of the company, but he had never found a good excuse. Now that she had taken the initiative to quit, it had nothing to do with him. Our collaboration with the Sullivan family won't be affected, will it? Eleanor Larson suddenly thought of what her cousin had said earlier, and she couldn't help but worry. We'll be fine. She was the one who quit, so what does that have to do with me? Besides, these things are the company's internal affairs. Do you think the Sullivan family can really have any say in it? Still, Eleanor Larson couldn't rest easy. Finn Taylor spotted his wife's relaxed expression as soon as she walked into the house. He had never seen that on his wife before. What is going on with her? Why is she so happy? Did something good happen? Why don't you share it with me too? Yvette Larson replied, I resigned from my job. Resigned? Finn Taylor was stunned. Why? Why did she suddenly resign from her job? That's right, I quit. Just then, Finn Taylor suddenly remembered that his wife had told him about running into some problems at work just a few days earlier. It now seems like there is much more than what meets the eye. Finn Taylor noted down in his heart to deal with this matter. He wasn't going to let anyone bully his wife. Ellipsis. The next day, the Larson Corporation called for a board meeting. Many people arrived at the meeting room apart from Yvette Larson. This intrigued them. Quince Larson cut to the chance and quickly announced, I have an announcement to make. Yesterday, Yvette Larson handed me her resignation because she was unable to resolve the matter with Stephen Turner. As the chairman, I deliberated for a long time and decided to accept her resignation. From today onward, Eleanor Larson will be the CEO of our company. This was huge news. Who would have thought that things would take such a turn? Someone asked, what will happen with the Sullivan family's project? They were furious when we sent someone other than Yvette Larson last time. Will there be trouble now? Quince Larson waved that person off confidently. The Sullivan family won't be a problem. Yvette Larson tendered her resignation on her own accord, so it has nothing to do with us. These are our company's internal affairs, and the Sullivan family has no right to interfere in them. Besides, the Sullivan family was just uneasy because we changed the person in charge of the project too quickly after starting the project. Now that we've made so much progress, I'm sure the Sullivan family can see just how much importance we've placed on the project. Changing the person in charge doesn't mean much as long as we earn money. We're all businessmen, profits are the most important thing to us. Everyone nodded fervently at Quince Larson's logical explanation. Just then, someone pushed the door to the meeting room open. Quince Larson's assistant rushed in and whispered something to him. The latter appeared agitated upon hearing this. "What's wrong, Quince?" Quince Larson replied, "Mr. Hunter Sullivan is here." Whoosh! The door to the meeting room was wide open, and Hunter Sullivan walked in with a group of people. Everyone was stumped by the situation. Quince Larson put on a smile and walked over. "Mr. Sullivan, what brings you here? You should have told my subordinates you were coming. I'd have gone to welcome you personally." Quince Larson knew just how crucial this project with the Sullivan family was to his family. As such, he didn't dare to act too arrogantly in front of Hunter Sullivan. "Mr. Sullivan, why are you here?" Hunter Sullivan pointed at the men in suits beside him. "Let me introduce you to some of my friends Robin, Terry James, and Javier Tyson." As Hunter Sullivan pointed each of them out, Quince Larson greeted them respectfully. These were all friends of Hunter Sullivan, he couldn't afford to offend any of them. Only when Hunter Sullivan was done with his introductions did Quince Larson test his luck. "Mr. Sullivan, may I ask who they are?" "Oh, they're my company's legal consultants. I thought I'd introduce them to you." Quince Larson was slightly confused, not understanding why the other had the need for legal consultants. "Quince Larson, I'm terminating our collaboration with the Larson family. If you think it's unfair, you can sue me. My legal consultants will handle it." With that, Hunter Sullivan turned to leave. Quince Larson was still in a daze. "Mr. Sullivan, what's wrong? Did I do something that upset you?" "I'll change. I'll definitely change." Hunter Sullivan laughed. "Didn't I warn your family a long time ago? I only decided to work with your family because I thought well of Yvette Larson. Since she's resigned, I'm terminating the contract. If you're unhappy with my decision, you can always sue me. Whether it's $1 million or $10 million in compensation that you want, my legal consultants will help you with that." With that, Hunter Sullivan left. Only 3 words popped up in Quince Larson's mind. "We're done for." It was true, the Larson family was doomed. Everyone knew full well that the Larson family had invested all of their funds into this project. Once they broke even in 3 years' time, the company could even be listed. But now that the contract was being terminated, their funds were locked up. The Larson Corporation was in grave danger of going bankrupt. As for suing Hunter Sullivan, Quince Larson had never once considered that. The other was a prominent figure in New York, while the Larson family was merely a second-tier family in San Francisco. They were worlds apart. Leaving aside whether they had any chance of winning the lawsuit, the Sullivan family could crush them at any time. Just a moment ago, Quince Larson had triumphantly announced Yvette Larson's resignation. But now, his company was on the verge of toppling. The entire Larson family glared at Quince Larson. They were no fools, and they could all guess that Yvette Larson's resignation had something to do with Quince Larson. This time, he has really dragged all of us down with him. "Quince Larson, didn't you say that nothing would go wrong? Look at the state we're in now. What are you going to do about this?" The Larson family was like an ancient tree with many branches. If the Larson family were to declare bankruptcy, every branch on this tree would fall along with it. As Larson family head, Quince Larson held absolute power. But great power came with great responsibility. Everyone was now waiting for Quince Larson to make a decision. The latter had never expected to be faced with such a huge problem from just Yvette Larson's resignation. "This won't do. I can't let the Larson family fall." Just then, someone made a suggestion. "Quince Larson, since you were the cause of all this, you should solve it. I don't care how you do it, but you have to bring Yvette Larson back. Otherwise, you'd better forget about being the family head. I'm going to leave the Larson family, and you can do whatever you want then." Others quickly nodded in agreement. Quince Larson was truly in a panic now. What's the point in being family head if all family members leave the family? Left with no other choice, Quince Larson could only promise them that he would visit number 1 Pacific Heights to invite his cousin back. Because Quince Larson didn't live in the Pacific Heights neighborhood, there was no way for him to enter. Upon reaching Pacific Heights, he could only wait at the foot of the hill. At that very moment, Finn Taylor was looking at his wife up in number 1 Pacific Heights. Yvette, there are some things you don't have to fight for but should have, otherwise, others may think that you're easily bullied. They won't be grateful to you. In fact, they'll probably try to take advantage of you. Yvette Larson looked at her husband, not understanding why he was suddenly saying such profound words. What do you want to tell me? What I'm saying is that you're a Larson. You're not being bullied because you're a girl, rather, it's because you don't have a status. Think about it, if you were the Larson family head, how would the rest of them treat you? Yvette Larson shut her eyes, contemplating that question carefully. Very quickly, the image of the entire Larson family bowing respectfully to her appeared in her mind. Although this wasn't what Yvette Larson truly wanted, she'd be delighted if it turned into reality. After all, who didn't want to be respected by others? SoundStories audiobooks. But Yvette Larson still didn't understand why her husband would say such things out of the blue. I'm not even the Larson Corporation's CEO now, let alone the Larson family head. There's no way that would happen. Ellipsis. At the foot of Pacific Heights, Quince Larson and Eleanor Larson had been waiting here for at least half an hour. Suddenly, the latter fell onto the ground with beads of sweat dripping down her forehead. What's wrong with you, Eleanor? Quince Larson was scared stiff. What's happening? Take me to the hospital. That was all Eleanor Larson said before she lost consciousness. Nothing will happen, right? Quince Larson was terrified, but he didn't dare to dwell on it. He quickly picked his cousin up and drove to St. Cloud Hospital. At the hospital, the doctor conducted a thorough examination on Eleanor Larson. The result dumbfounded Quince Larson pregnant. That's right, Eleanor Larson was pregnant. An unwed young lady had gotten pregnant. Although society had gotten much more open-minded these days, the Larson family was still traditional and conservative. If their grandpa were to find out about it, Eleanor Larson might be beaten to death. Thankfully, Quince Larson was the current family head. But no matter who the family head was, this wasn't a trivial matter. Quince Larson looked at his cousin who had just woken up and asked, "Who's the father?" Eleanor Larson didn't reply to him and simply burst into tears. Because of her silence, Quince Larson could sort of guess the answer. He clenched his fist and swung it through the air. Sigh, will we always be bullied by the rich? Hunter Sullivan is trying to make us go bankrupt, while Alexander Scott has destroyed your reputation and even got you pregnant. Ellipsis. Finn Taylor had arranged for everything that had happened to the Larson Corporation. Thus, he naturally knew about Quince Larson and Eleanor Larson arriving at Pacific Heights to apologize. That was also why he knew about Quince Larson sending his cousin to the hospital. Similarly, Finn Taylor had received news of Eleanor Larson's pregnancy. When he received that piece of news, he, too, was stunned. Why have things turned out this way? Given how she has humiliated my wife and me countless times in the past, it's time to teach her a lesson. But if she's pregnant with Alexander Scott's child, things will be difficult to handle. Alexander Scott's villa on Pacific Heights. Finn Taylor sat at the head of the table while the four guardians stood by the side, not daring to take so much as a deep breath. Alexander Scott was kneeling down on the ground. Alexander Scott, I need an explanation from you. The man in question was in a daze too. An explanation? What am I supposed to say? To ruin Eleanor Larson's reputation, I did indeed sleep with her. But I can swear to the heavens that I took all necessary precautions. Even so, I couldn't be sure that I wouldn't get her pregnant. Even Alexander Scott himself didn't know if the baby in Eleanor Larson's stomach was his. Seeing that he remained silent, Finn Taylor raged. Alexander Scott, do you know that my plans will be ruined if that child really is yours? Finn Taylor was a vicious man, but only to his enemies. He'd never harm the innocent, much less an unborn child. That child could even be Alexander Scott's. If this child was ever born, Finn Taylor could never do anything to Eleanor Larson, and that would ruin all of his plans. Alexander Scott slapped himself viciously. I'm not human, it's all my fault. Finn Taylor waved him off. Forget it, stop hitting yourself. I'm to be blamed too since I was the one who asked you to do that. I have an important mission for you now. Find a way to conduct a DNA test and see if that child is really yours. Alexander Scott wanted to know that too. Is that really my child? If it is, I don't know how I'm supposed to face that woman anymore. With a fruit basket in hand, Alexander Scott arrived at St. Cloud Hospital, but no sooner had he walked into the ward than he was chased out by Quince Larson. Usually, Quince Larson never would have dared to treat Alexander Scott in this manner, but it was true that the latter had made a mistake. Because he was filled with guilt, he wasn't going to deal with the former. Quince Larson, I heard that the Sullivan family wants to terminate your contract. I know Hunter Sullivan too. If you let me in, I'll talk to him for you. Quince Larson shoved Alexander Scott out. That's not going to work on me. The baby has nothing to do with you. Hurry up and scram. Alexander Scott was at a loss. If this had happened in the past, he would have exploded a long time ago. Who are you to order me around, Quince Larson? But it would be embarrassing if everything gets exposed. Alexander, I can help you. If you don't want this child, I'll ask Eleanor to abort it. However, you have to do me a favor. Go ahead. Alexander Scott didn't agree right away. It's simple. I think we're going to have to terminate our contract with the Sullivan family, so help me fight this lawsuit. As long as we win, Eleanor Larson will get an abortion. Of course, I have to remind you that you'd better hurry. I can't possibly strangle your child to death after they're born. Alexander Scott left after hearing Quince Larson's request. Everyone quickly rushed up upon seeing Alexander Scott return. How did it go? Do you know who the father is? Is it you? Alexander Scott shook his head. I didn't meet Eleanor Larson. Everyone was confused. What's going on? Didn't he go to look for Eleanor Larson? If he didn't see Eleanor Larson, what has he done? I wanted to go in, but Quince Larson stood in the way and refused to let me in. They glanced at each other, helplessness in their gazes. He had no choice. He couldn't possibly barge his way in with Quince Larson there. Did Quince Larson make a request? Finn Taylor asked, his tone exceptionally dark. SoundStories audiobooks. It was evident that he was in a foul mood, and the reason for that was obvious. He had already guessed that Quince Larson's request would be unfavorable to him. Yes, he wants me to represent the Larson family to sue the Sullivan family for compensation. Eleanor Larson will only get an abortion when they receive that compensation. Everyone's faces soured the moment they heard Quince Larson's request. Finn Taylor had already been laying the foundation for his plans for a long time, and he had come to the last step. Once the Larson family declared bankruptcy, Finn Taylor would have won. Unfortunately, Alexander Scott had gotten into trouble just then. Nobody knew what to do. Don't act rashly. Give me some time to think about it. Finn Taylor's head hurt, and he left after patting Alexander Scott on the shoulders. As soon as he arrived home, Yvette Larson flew over, saying, Eleanor is pregnant. Should we go over and visit her? Finn Taylor thought about it. He was intending to check on her too, so he nodded in agreement. All right. The pair then bought some fruit before heading to St. Cloud Hospital. Quince Larson could chase Alexander Scott away, but he had no reason to chase Finn Taylor and Yvette Larson away no matter how much he hated them. Just an hour earlier, Quince Larson hoped to convince his cousin to return to the company, but that was no longer urgent to him now. It didn't even matter anymore. Perhaps this pregnancy would be an opportunity for the Larson family. After all, the amount they could earn from that collaboration couldn't even compare to the compensation the Sullivan family had to pay them. Why are you guys here? Eleanor Larson was brusque. She lashed out the moment she saw the couple. Of course, Finn Taylor wasn't one to be trifled with, and he retorted, to see if you're dead. How I wish she was dead. I would have a lot less trouble to deal with now if Quince Larson had simply left his cousin to die. Finn Taylor, what are you saying? Eleanor is pregnant, so we must watch our behavior around her. Finn Taylor rolled his eyes. Think about our relationship. How dare you use that against me? But I won't hold it against a pregnant lady, else, people might gossip about me if word gets out. Eleanor, who's the father of the child? Yvette Larson couldn't hold it in. It was natural for her to be asking about that as an elder in the family. Why should I tell you? Would you believe me if I said that it was Finn Taylor? Yvette Larson was rendered speechless. What's wrong with her? Why is she so worked up? They had only chatted briefly, but they left soon after. However, this hadn't been a wasted trip for Finn Taylor. He could tell that Eleanor Larson was indeed pregnant. Finn Taylor had impressive medical skills and could spot a pregnant lady with just one glance. Unfortunately, he didn't have the skills to identify the child's father. Go home. I have something to do, Finn Taylor instructed his wife before leaving. After leaving, Finn Taylor headed to Frederick Larson's house. When he arrived, he spotted the latter looking out of the windows. Uncle, are you waiting for your daughter? Frederick Larson rolled his eyes. Who's your uncle? Don't forget about what you did to my dad. I haven't gone after you for that. The Larson family still thought that Finn Taylor was the culprit behind Joseph Larson's condition. It was just that they were forced to stay silent about it normally, but that was what everyone thought too. Uncle, I'm here to discuss something important with you. Don't be so fierce. Finn Taylor took out a photo and handed it to Frederick Larson. The latter took a look at it, realizing that it was a photo of Alexander Scott. He knew that this man was the one who had ruined his daughter. Emotion surged in his heart as he glanced at the photo. "What are you trying to say, Finn Taylor? Did you know that your daughter is pregnant?" From Frederick Larson's expression, Finn Taylor could tell that he didn't, in fact, know. This made everything simpler. "Alexander Scott hired me to give your family $150,000. He wants Eleanor to abort the baby. I'm sure you know Alexander Scott's status'll never marry your daughter. Do you wish for Eleanor to have a child before getting married? Of course, he said that he'd consider giving you more if you think that $150,000 is too little." Hearing Finn Taylor's words, Frederick Larson stiffened. At that moment, Frederick Larson sat as still as a statue. His heart broke upon thinking about the situation his daughter was in. Never would he have expected his daughter to have gotten pregnant. Not only that, but the man wasn't even going to take responsibility for it. Instead, he had made Finn Taylor come over to ask him to make his daughter abort the baby. What a heartless man. Frederick Larson shook his head in disappointment. "I won't agree to it. I'm going to sue Alexander Scott. I want him to understand that he can't have everything he wants just because he's rich." Finn Taylor wanted to go on, but Frederick Larson chased him away. Finn Taylor felt helpless. "I had intended to find a breakthrough point via Frederick Larson, but that seems impossible now. What am I going to do?" He knew that it wasn't going to be easy to resolve this matter. Finn Taylor thought the matter through for a whole night but couldn't think of a good solution. In the end, he asked Alexander Scott and made a request of him. Following his boss's order, Alexander Scott headed to the hospital with several men in tow. Just like the previous day, Quince Larson wasn't going to give Alexander Scott the chance to enter. However, the latter got his men to subdue Quince Larson as he walked into Eleanor Larson's ward alone. The moment she spotted him, she couldn't help but sneer. "Are you scared now?" Alexander Scott didn't reply to her and instead posed another question. "How many months along are you?" Eleanor Larson chuckled. "You must be wondering if the child has anything to do with you. I'm telling you that it doesn't. Child is Finn Taylor's." Scram. Alexander Scott knew that the other was simply ranting, but her words evoked even more suspicion in him. "If I ignore her and allow her to give birth to the child, we'll truly be doomed. Eleanor Larson, I know you love money. I'll give you $150,000 to conduct a DNA test. If the child is mine, give birth to him, and I'll raise him." Eleanor Larson chuckled. "Alexander Scott, do you think I'm as gullible as a 3-year-old? You can just tell me if you don't want the child. Come on, there's a fruit knife here. You can kill me right now." She took the fruit knife out and handed it to the other. To be honest, the latter was very tempted to stab her to end everything. As long as Eleanor Larson was dead, everything would end. But he couldn't do that. Wasn't that vicious. If he knew for sure that Eleanor Larson was just playing with him and that she wasn't carrying his child, he might very well have killed her right then. However, he couldn't bring himself to do that. "Alexander Scott, what are you doing with that knife?" Quince Larson had finally struggled free from those men. Seeing the knife in Alexander Scott's hands, he quickly whipped out his phone to take a photo. Alexander Scott slammed the knife down on the bedhead frustratedly, saying to his men, "Teach him a lesson." Of course, Alexander Scott was talking about Quince Larson. With their boss's command, the men naturally didn't hold back. They gave Quince Larson a vicious beating. When Alexander Scott returned, Finn Taylor and the rest were waiting there for him. Finn Taylor was drumming the table with his fingers as he wondered how to resolve the matter. "Master Peregrine, do you think it's possible to get the DNA of that child if we rope in a doctor?" Finn Taylor waved him off, rejecting that suggestion. While that is the simplest solution, it's also the most foolish one. Quince Larson must have already thought of that and must have spoken to the doctor. We'd only be exposing ourselves if we do that now. "Master Peregrine, I have something." Just then, Zachary Kennedy, who was in the corner, spoke up. He was the most tech-savvy amongst them all. Over the past 2 days, everyone had been busy with discussions. On the other hand, Zachary Kennedy had been busy on his computer. Nobody knew what he was doing, but neither did they stop him from doing so. Now that he had finally spoken, everyone shot their gazes over. They wanted to know exactly what he had found. After everyone walked over, Alexander Scott pressed the spacebar on the keyboard. Then, a video started playing on the monitor. It clearly showed Eleanor Larson stumbling out of a bar, dead drunk, before collapsing at the door. A few young men then walked out of the bar after her. Seeing no response from Eleanor Larson after kicking her several times, they dragged her into their car. Alexander Scott fast-forwarded the video. About half an hour later, Eleanor Larson was thrown out of the car. Her clothes were evidently in a disheveled state, and the car raced off. Click. Alexander Scott closed the video and turned to the rest. Everyone looked at each other in confusion, not comprehending what they had just seen. This means that Eleanor Larson also did it with other men apart from Alexander Scott. Alexander Scott was overwhelmed with emotions. It wasn't mate, definitely wasn't me. I never would have made such a low-level mistake since I always take all precautions. Master Peregrine, I was framed. I was definitely framed. Alexander Scott kneeled down and begged Finn Taylor for mercy. The latter helped him up. The truth was finally out. The only thing they had to do now was a paternity test. Don't worry, it wasn't you. I won't let anyone smear your name. It wasn't just Alexander Scott who was raging. Finn Taylor was fuming too. He had nearly been tricked. Ellipsis. Street. Cloud Hospital. Eleanor Larson had just finished cleaning Quince Larson's wound. Then, she said, "Quince, I heard everything you said to Alexander Scott. It's impossible for him to get that money back for you." Quince Larson was still reveling in his daydream, so he frowned the moment he heard that. "Don't frown. It's simple. I have no right to do that. Even if I give birth to the kid, they'll have no status. At the very most, I'll receive alimony to raise the kid. However, my life will be over if I give birth to the kid. Alexander Scott would never offend Hunter Sullivan for this child. This child's ending is already set, so I have to abort him. But if Alexander Scott wants us to abort this child, we'll extort a good sum of money from him. My suggestion is to invite him to the Larson family's residence along with the rest of the Larson family to extort some money from him." Quince Larson was stunned by his cousin's suggestion. What does she mean, asking the Larson family members to come over and extort money from Alexander Scott? Eleanor, do you know what you're saying? Won't you be too ashamed to lie from then on? Eleanor Larson smiled bitterly. Do you think that I can still stay in the Larson family after this? I just want some money before leaving. Hearing his cousin's words, Quince Larson couldn't help but feel upset. After all, she was the closest kin he had in the entire family. No matter what they did in the past, they would always face it head-on together. Never would he have expected that they would land in such a state today. Quince Larson thought that he had won the moment he was given the position of family head. From then on, nobody could stand in his way in the Larson family. It hadn't been long since then, yet it was all over for them. Listen to me, I'll help you organize it. Tell them that I'll only take half of the money from Alexander Scott and that they can split the other half. Although Quince Larson's heart broke, he complied nonetheless. After all, he wanted a share of the loot too. Hasn't Eleanor Larson already said so? She'll only take half of the money, and the other half will be left to the rest of the Larson family. As the Larson family head, it's only natural for me to have a larger share. Although it seemed as though he was drinking his cousin's blood, Quince Larson didn't feel bad for doing so. She took the initiative to make that offer. I didn't force her to do so. Besides, Eleanor got pregnant before marriage. To a certain extent, she has ruined the family's name. It's embarrassing for him as the family head and even more humiliating for Eleanor herself. I'm already respecting her by taking the largest share of the money. In the name of the family head, Quince Larson gathered the entire family apart from Yvette Larson's family. He then announced what had happened to Eleanor Larson to them. Initially, everyone had been infuriated and started criticizing Eleanor Larson. But when they heard that she was willing to split the money with them, they quickly shut up. Now, they made Eleanor Larson out to be nothing more than an innocent girl. Naturally, they couldn't stand by and watch as relatives. Quince Larson paid no heed to how fake these relatives of his were. What age are we living in? It's disgusting to think that we're still talking about familial ties. To be honest, we're just strangers who are bound by blood ties. We're all just making use of each other. This was what Quince Larson thought. If possible, he'd even make use of everyone present to his own benefit. Street. Cloud Hospital. Eleanor Larson dialed Alexander Scott's number. At that moment, he was with Finn Taylor and the rest of the men. When he picked up the call, he put it on speaker. Come to the Larson family's residence tomorrow. Why, I'll get an abortion, but $150,000 is too little. Let's discuss the price. All right. With that, they ended the call. Alexander Scott glanced at Finn Taylor, not understanding what Eleanor Larson was up to. But Finn Taylor smiled. Smart Alec. What do you mean, Master Peregrine? Alexander Scott was still confused about what Eleanor Larson was up to. She had just refused my offer the previous day and had even threatened me with death. Why is she suddenly changing her tone now? Don't you understand? Isn't it very normal? Would she dare to give birth to that child? Don't you think she's clear about whose child that is? I'm sure she doesn't dare to give birth to that child because you definitely insist on getting a paternity test done once the child is born before you pay alimony. Then, everything will be exposed. Now, she's trying to get as much as she can before aborting the baby. Finn Taylor laid it bare for Alexander Scott, and the latter finally understood what was going on. What shall we do then, Master Peregrine? Be a good father. Don't they want to put on an act? We'll play along till the end. Although Alexander Scott didn't know what Finn Taylor was trying to do, he wasn't going to go against Master Peregrine's orders. Upon reaching home, Finn Taylor immediately looked for his wife. I'll tell you something, I know who the father of Eleanor Larson's child is. Who? Over the past few days, Yvette Larson had become rather interested in her cousin's pregnancy as well. She wanted to know whose child it was. Alexander Scott. While she had already guessed so, Yvette Larson was still shocked after hearing the truth. What are you going to do now? Yvette Larson knew Alexander Scott was very likely her husband's subordinate. As such, she wanted to know just what he would do. It's simple. Eleanor Larson will give birth to the child, and Alexander Scott will raise the child. Huh. Finn Taylor's answer stunned his wife. Men should take responsibility for their actions. Oh right, there's something else. Eleanor Larson and Alexander Scott will be discussing the alimony at the Larson family's residence tomorrow. We should head over and speak up for Eleanor Larson. We can't let that bast get away with this. Yvette Larson couldn't help but feel that something was different about her husband today. She felt that he was keeping something from her. Ellipsis. The next day arrived. When Quince Larson saw Finn Taylor and his wife at the Larson family's residence, he rolled his eyes. Why are you here? Quince Larson had invited the entire Larson family, save for Yvette Larson's family. However, their family had still turned up in the end. Why not? We miss Grandpa, so can't we come to take a look around the Larson family's residence? Is something happening here today? Of course, Quince Larson wasn't going to believe Finn Taylor. The latter must have received some news and is here only to stir up trouble. But this was the Larson family's residence after all. He wasn't in any place to chase them away. Finn Taylor and Yvette Larson ignored Quince Larson and simply walked in. The moment they walked in, the couple spotted Eleanor Larson. The latter was annoyed that the couple had come, but just like Quince Larson, she had no other choice. All she could say was that she had chosen the wrong location. Why is everyone here today? Are we holding a family meeting today? Eleanor Larson sneered and looked at Finn Taylor. Stop acting, Finn Taylor. Do you really not know what's going on today? Aren't you here because of that too? Finn Taylor chuckled and looked at her. Should I congratulate you then? Finn Taylor's congratulations infuriated Eleanor Larson. SoundStories audiobooks. How had this child been conceived? Others might not know about it, but was Eleanor Larson not clear about that? It was the biggest humiliation in her entire life, yet she had to use this humiliation in exchange for her glory. However, she knew full well in her heart that this glory was nothing but shame. If others were to scold her or treat her indifferently, she might have felt better. But congratulating her like what Finn Taylor had just done only made her feel much worse. Finn Taylor, you can shut up if you have nothing better to say. Finn Taylor sneered as he looked at Eleanor Larson. How's the baby? When's it due? Eleanor Larson had never intended to give birth to the child, so the due date was very much non-existent. She couldn't help but think that her cousin's husband was behaving strangely. Hadn't he just asked me to abort the baby a few days ago? Why is he acting so concerned about me? It seems as though he wants me to give birth to the child. But no matter what happens, I will never agree to that. That's none of your business. Finn Taylor was unperturbed by Eleanor Larson's rage. He was waiting for Alexander Scott's arrival, so he was just trying to waste some time with small talk since he was bored. After a long while, Alexander Scott finally arrived. He had even brought 4 bodyguards with him. Of course, the Larson family had already expected this. If things went south, they might even get into a scuffle. He would be risking his life coming alone, so it was normal for him to bring bodyguards with him. You're finally here, Eleanor Larson said when she saw Alexander Scott. But the latter was extremely cold toward her. Let's have a chat. It was a long desk, and Quince Larson sat on one end while Alexander Scott sat on the other. Eleanor Larson chose to sit next to her cousin. As for the rest of the Larson family, they simply sat wherever suited them. Well, have you thought about how much you're going to compensate me? Eleanor Larson went straight to the point without beating around the bush. Finn Taylor's gaze turned cold. He hadn't expected Eleanor Larson to be in such a hurry, but this only confirmed his guess the child was not Alexander Scott's. All eyes were glued to Alexander Scott as he drummed his fingers against the desk. Every time they made a sound, the Larson family couldn't help but feel that their hearts were being pounded against. Give birth to the child. Finally, Alexander Scott spoke up after thinking for 10 whole minutes. His words stunned the entire family, especially Eleanor Larson. What did you say? I said, give birth to the kid. Alexander Scott repeated himself. The Larson family looked at each other, their eyes filled with confusion. What's going on? The child will have no status. What will they get even if they're born? Eleanor Larson refused. I just want 1.5 million. If you give me 1.5 million, I'll abort the baby. Eleanor Larson quoted a price, and it was already much lower than what she had expected previously. But now that things weren't going her way, she didn't dare to ask for anything more. Don't abort it, I'm still unmarried. Since you're pregnant with my child, I'll naturally marry you in a grand ceremony and bring you home. I heard that the Larson family has run into some trouble recently and might even have to shut down the business. It's no big deal. If you guys are fine with it, I can ask the Sullivan family to continue their collaboration with you. Otherwise, I'll take over the project from them. The entire Larson family immediately agreed to his suggestion, but Eleanor Larson felt that things were spinning out of control way too quickly. Oh, right, Eleanor Larson, you mentioned 1.5 million. I'll give you that much money as a gift. What else do you need? Will a villa on Pacific Heights and a Ferrari be enough? Why don't all of you help us think about what else we'd need for a wedding? The Larson family went crazy like ravenous wolves. They were overwhelmed with emotions as soon as they heard Alexander Scott. One said that he should receive a Rolls-Royce, while another said that she should receive a $1 million villa. Now, 1.5 million seemed much more like $150 in their eyes. They were all fighting to get a share of the pie. Eleanor Larson bit down on her lips. There is no way something as good as this is true. Something must have gone wrong, but I can't place my finger on it yet. Very quickly, Alexander Scott's subordinate had written down all of the relatives' extravagant requests. Alexander Scott took a good look at the list. Everyone's gazes stiffened, and they stared at him. They couldn't wait to see if Alexander Scott would agree to their requests. If he did, that would be crazy. Eventually, Alexander Scott nodded after what seemed like an eternity. All right, I can fulfill all these requests. At that moment, the entire Larson family burst out into cheers. They all gazed at Eleanor Larson as though she was a saint, even calling her affectionately. But just then, Alexander Scott spoke up. Everyone, since Eleanor Larson and I are getting into a shotgun marriage, I think it's only right for us to do a paternity test. The family elders didn't give it much thought and simply agreed. This is completely normal. How can she expect to marry into a rich family without doing a paternity test? Now, Eleanor Larson finally knew what was wrong. She shook her head. I'm not going to take a paternity test. You don't trust me. Either you give me 1.5 million for me to abort the baby, or you marry me without doing the paternity test. At that, Alexander Scott, who had been polite all along, turned tough. Eleanor Larson, that's not up to you. If you don't do a paternity test, I won't marry you, much less give you $1.5 million to abort the baby. Please try to persuade Eleanor, everyone. I came full of sincerity today, but I never thought that it would end this way. How saddening. Alexander Scott had just offered the entire Larson family such lavish gifts, yet it had gone up in the air just because of Eleanor Larson's decision. Of course, the Larson family wasn't going to let it go just like that. Eleanor, what are you saying? Since you're pregnant with Mr. Scott's child and he's willing to marry you, it's only right that you marry him. That's right, Eleanor. It'll be the greatest honor of your life to marry Mr. Scott. It's just a paternity test. We haven't done anything wrong, so what are you afraid of? Yes, after the paternity test, Eleanor will marry into the Scott family. Then, the whole family will enjoy the benefits. They're all daughters of the Larson family, but some are able to bring us to such great heights while others are such disgraces to us. Forget that we've been humiliated because of her, but it's really bad luck that we nearly had to close down our company because of her too. What are these people thinking? It's fine if they want to praise Eleanor Larson, but why do they have to bring Yvette into the picture? However, Finn Taylor didn't say anything because he knew that these people were going to pay for their words very soon. No, I'm not going to get a paternity test done. Nobody in the Larson family understood why Eleanor Larson was so firm about not getting a paternity test done. Such a bright future was awaiting all of them, and nobody was willing to give that up now. Eleanor Larson, that's not up to you to decide. As the family head, I demand that you get a paternity test done. Earlier on, the Larson family had all made their requests. Of course, Quince Larson was no exception since he was the family head. In fact, he had even used his status to make the most extravagant request. It now seems like everything is going down the drain. There's no way I'm going to let that happen. He couldn't care less about his relationship with his cousin and simply made a decision for her. No, I'm never going to do it. Even if we have to tie you up to bring you there, we'll do it. Seeing the scene playing out in front of him, Finn Taylor couldn't help but chuckle. Yvette Larson was confused. Finn, what's going on? You don't understand, do you? Finn Taylor knocked against the table. Alexander Scott nodded. With that command, he could proceed to the last step. Everyone must be curious as to why Eleanor Larson would rather not marry me than get a paternity test done, right? Hearing Alexander Scott's words, the entire Larson family put smiles on their faces. That's not it, she's just throwing a tantrum, we'll teach her well. Alexander Scott sneered. A tantrum? I don't think so. With that, he nodded. His bodyguard then took out a projector and projected a video on the wall. This is why she'll never do a paternity test even if it means death. Everyone turned their attention to the wall. They could clearly spot Eleanor Larson stumbling out of a bar, obviously drunk. Then, she fell to the ground. At that very moment, several young men walked out of the bar too. The Larson family clearly saw Eleanor Larson being dragged into the men's car. At that, everyone's eyes shot toward her. A bad thought surfaced in their minds. Then, the car shook. Eleanor Larson was then thrown out of the car with disheveled clothes. After that, the men sped off in their car. Alexander Scott's gaze was set on Eleanor Larson. Were you afraid that I'd find out about this? You know very well just how many men you've slept with, so how dare a slut like you try to get into the Scott family? You can dream on. And all of you, Quince Larson, Frederick Larson, Franklin Larson, who are you? Did you think that you'd be able to extort money from me just because of that bitch? You must be dreaming. Those words were like a slap in the face to the Larson family. Yet, none of them dared to utter a word as Alexander Scott lambasted them. The truth was clear. Apart from the eldest branch, are any of your families really innocent? You guys even laugh at Finn Taylor for being a useless matrilocal son-in-law, but from what I see, he's the one supporting your entire family. Without their family, the Larson family would be on the verge of bankruptcy. Of course, I don't think it's strange that Eleanor Larson would do this. After all, it isn't even the first time you three families are doing something so shameless. Isn't that right, Franklin Larson? Isn't that right, Frederick Larson? Isn't that right, Hillary Stone? With that, Alexander Scott turned around and left, leaving only the second, third, and fourth branches of the Larson family there with terribly sour expressions. Everyone glared at Eleanor Larson with piercing stares. It's all this woman's fault. If not for her shameless act, the ugly truth that the Larson family had kept under wraps for decades wouldn't have been revealed. Finn Taylor stretched and chuckled. The innocent Larson family daydreaming. As soon as he finished his sentence, he picked up his wife's hand and strode out. Typically, anyone would have started lashing out at Finn Taylor if he were to mock them. But now, nobody dared to say a thing. It would be humiliating. The innocent Larson family daydreaming. Yvette Larson muttered under her breath and then turned to her husband. What a good day. After returning home, Yvette Larson told her parents about everything that had happened. Hearing that, Linda James scoffed. The second, third, and fourth branches have always been bullying us. Everyone knows that they're in cahoots just because of that scandal they caused back then. Who would have thought that the daughter would be as shameless as her father? Unlike Linda James, Francis Larson massaged his temples. Then, he said to his daughter, Yvette, I heard that you resigned. Because of that, the Sullivan family ended their collaboration with us. Why, do you really want the Larson family to go bankrupt? Yvette Larson was a Larson too. Although she would be able to get back at the family if they were to go bankrupt, there was one barrier she would never be able to overcome, showing her grandpa that she was better than Quince Larson and that the Larson Corporation would definitely do well in her hands. But now, the company was on the verge of bankruptcy. It seemed like she wouldn't have that chance anymore. Dad, I know. Don't force Mel at me, think about it. Finn Taylor looked at his wife meaningfully. It seems like it's time for me to deal with someone. Finn Taylor made a call to Andre Cavill to catch someone for him, Stephen Turner. Andre Cavill got to work right away. This was the first mission Finn Taylor ever gave him. He had to complete it perfectly. Not long after, Andre Cavill made a call to say that he had caught the man. As such, Finn Taylor headed out to meet Stephen Turner. However, he bumped into someone at the foot of Pacific Heights, Frank Lucas. The latter had a smile plastered on his face. "I've already done as you asked, Mr. Taylor." What Frank Lucas was referring to was naturally the matter of driving the Jensen family to their grave. Over the past few days, Frank Lucas had gone crazy and gone all out against the Jensen family. He couldn't be bothered about how well-known and respected Aaron Jensen, Gregory Jensen, or Kelly Jensen were in San Francisco. He had beaten all of them up. Then, he even beat up those who dared to work with the Jensen family. Due to this, the Jensen family began to crumble. Of course, the Gold family played a crucial role too. They made a sudden announcement that they were going to end their project with the Jensen family, and Third Master Gold even said that he'd never deal with Aaron Jensen ever again. Although no one knew what had happened, anyone sharp or acute enough had chosen to protect themselves. One by one, they chose to end their projects with the Jensen family too. Within a week's time, the Jensen family had neither connections, money, nor projects. While they weren't officially bankrupt, it wouldn't be long before that happened. But nobody was sure why this was happening. You did a good job. Finn Taylor hadn't paid too much attention to this matter, but Frank Lucas had already settled it, and he probably wouldn't lie to him on that front. "Mr. Taylor, I'm sorry that I failed to recognize you the previous time. Why don't I treat you to a meal?" Finn Taylor looked at Frank Lucas. The latter is terribly efficient. Although the Jensen family means nothing to me, they're still a prominent family. Yet, Frank Lucas took less than a week to take them down. It seems like this is someone I can train. Since Frank Lucas is already treating me to a meal and has already apologized, I will give him a chance. As such, he agreed to it. "This is the address for tonight, Mr. Taylor." Finn Taylor glanced at the invitation and casually put it into his pocket. "All right, I'll make a note." Frank Lucas was sharp. Upon seeing that the other seemed busy, he quickly said that he'd arrange the meal before leaving. After arriving at the bar, Finn Taylor headed into the innermost private room that wasn't usually open to the public. Not just anyone was allowed into the room. Stephen Turner was still sipping on his tea at home, waiting for Yvette Larson to show up. Once that happened, he wouldn't just have a beauty by his side, but he would even get his hands on much more money. But just then, a group of men in black bundled him up and took him away. By the time he awoke, he was already in a private room with Andre Cavill sitting right in front of him. Stephen Turner knew of Andre Cavill. Gentle Breeze Bar had recently earned a name for itself. Word had gotten around about the bar's boss Andre Cavill taking down dozens of men all by himself. Yet, Stephen Turner had never expected the bar's boss to look for him. "Brother Andre, I haven't offended you, have I? Have you gotten the wrong person?" Stephen Turner gave it some thought. "I've never gotten in the way of Andre Cavill. The latter probably has the wrong person. As such, I will probably be released once we talk things through. After all, we're all businessmen. There's no point in offending a rich and prominent figure." What Stephen Turner had never expected was Andre Cavill ignoring him. All the latter did was sharpen his knife. After a few hours, the knife in his hands had almost become the sharpest dagger in the world. What's he trying to do? Even if he wants to make trouble for me, he should say something. If that's not what he's after, then why did he bring me here? Just as Stephen Turner was racking his brains for an explanation, the door opened. Finn Taylor strolled over, and he scanned the room briefly. Andre Cavill immediately put away his dagger and stood up. Finn Taylor walked up to Stephen Turner. "You're Stephen Turner, right? Who are you?" Stephen Turner was confused. "Who's this?" "Finn Taylor." Stephen Turner was stunned for a moment before he burst out into laughter. What a joke. I thought I offended some prominent figure, but it turns out that it's just this piece of trash, the most famous matrilocal son-in-law of San Francisco. What, are you trying to take revenge for your wife, Finn Taylor? Sigh, I didn't even do anything. It's just something we do in this industry. Isn't it only right for her to give something up in exchange for money? Besides, she's just a woman. I'll never believe that she's done nothing to get to her position today. I heard that Hunter Sullivan immediately went to the Larson family's residence to terminate their contract the moment she resigned. Do you think there's really nothing between your wife and Hunter Sullivan? Ha ha ha. Stephen Turner was bent over in laughter. Andre Cavill, on the other hand, was clutching his temples. There is no lack of fools in this world, but someone as stupid as Stephen Turner is really a first for me. If he had apologized and begged for his life, Finn Taylor might have spared him. But now, that is no longer an option. Just as expected, Finn Taylor landed a vicious punch on Stephen Turner's face. A few teeth flew out of the latter's mouth, and then Finn Taylor punched the other right in the chest. A loud crackling sound of bones breaking could be heard. Finn Taylor landed one punch after another on Stephen Turner's eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. The latter was now bleeding from all orifices. I don't want to see him on this earth ever again. Finn Taylor rubbed his hands and patted the dust off his clothes before heading out. Andre Cavill strolled up to Stephen Turner. By now, the latter was already terrified. Since you're going to die, I might as well tell you everything. Finn Taylor might be a useless matrilocal son-in-law in your eyes, but he's actually my boss. In fact, he has another identity that would probably scare you to death if I were to tell you about it. He's Master Peregrine of Peregrine Hall. The moment those words were spoken, Stephen Turner's heart started pounding even more rapidly. His knees then buckled, and he dropped to the ground. He had died from shock. Andre Cavill checked Stephen Turner's breathing and couldn't help but feel speechless when he realized that the latter was dead. He died just like the Tho-Lame. But since Master Peregrine has already given his orders, I can't let this man remain comfortable even after death. As such, he whipped the other's corpse over and over again. Finn Taylor walked out of the bar and glanced at his watch. It was about time to attend the party that night, but something bothered him. He didn't have a car. Frank Lucas had smashed his Ferrari. The BMW was with his wife, and it had been a long time since he had driven it. Finn Taylor glanced at the manager of the bar. Do you have a car? Yes, but it isn't very good. It's just a Buick that costs about $10,000. Finn Taylor had visited the bar many times. Although the manager didn't know the former's true identity, his boss always treated Finn Taylor with respect every time he came. The manager took all that to heart. As such, he immediately responded the moment Finn Taylor posed that question. However, he felt that his car wouldn't fit the latter. Can it be used? Yes. All right then, hand me your key and get Frank Lucas to give you $150,000 later. I'm buying the car from you. The manager simply took that as a joke. Nonetheless, he handed the key to Finn Taylor. He never gave that $150,000 a thought. Finn Taylor took the invitation out and glanced at it. Hoya Hotel. What kind of stupid hotel is that? I've never heard of it. But Finn Taylor wasn't picky. He could drive a $150,000 Ferrari or a $10,000 Buick all the same. He could also eat a $10,000 feast or a $10 meal at a roadside stall all the same. Since Frank Lucas is giving me a treat and has decided on Hoya Hotel, I'm not going to say anything. Very quickly, he arrived at the entrance of Hoya Hotel in the Buick. Finn Taylor asked the security officer, "Where's the parking lot?" The latter glanced at Finn Taylor and rolled his eyes immediately. "There isn't one." Finn Taylor was stunned. What is going on? At a hotel like this, valets would help guests park their cars. I had only asked where the parking lot was because I didn't want to trouble them, yet I've been met with such a terrible attitude. What's with your attitude? What? Am I wrong? Look at the car you're driving, it's just a lousy Buick. How dare you enter? We're a 5-star hotel, so aren't you embarrassed by driving a car that isn't worth at least $100,000? Finn Taylor was stunned. What's he saying? Only a car that costs $100,000 is worthy of being called a car. Is a $10,000 car not a car? Is there really a need to make such distinctions between people? We're all the same. Honk. Just then, a Cayenne started honking behind Finn Taylor. What's going on? Why can't I go in? The Cayenne's owner looked out of the window and started lashing out. Hello, young Master James. I'll chase him away immediately. The security officer obviously recognized the Cayenne's owner and was even especially polite toward him. Then, he walked up to Finn Taylor. Do you see that? That Cayenne costs $700,000. That's a car. You're just driving a Buick. Hurry up and get lost. Finn Taylor thought that the whole situation was ridiculous. I was asking where the parking lot is. I'll drive over to the parking lot by myself. This guy is just a mere security officer, so how dare he look down on others? I told you that there isn't one. Can't you understand English? Finn Taylor was speechless. He got out of the car and threw his key to the security officer. Drive my car over. With that, he left. Seeing that Finn Taylor hadn't moved his car away and had even left, the Cayenne's owner flared up. Bang! He switched on the engine and rammed into Finn Taylor's Buick. Then, he simply strode off. Even after witnessing the scene, the security officer didn't think that young Master James was in the wrong. That was just how the world was. You're just driving a Buick, and you didn't even want to give way to a Cayenne. That's on you. It's not his fault for banging into you. In fact, you'll even have to pay for the damages to his car. That's reality for the poor. Finn Taylor had heard the crash, yet he didn't stop to look back. Finn Taylor's entrance attracted the attention of everyone in the lobby of Hoya Hotel. After all, he was a well-known figure in San Francisco. While the driver of the Cayenne hadn't recognized him, that didn't mean that nobody else did. Very quickly, someone pointed at him and said, "That looks like Finn Taylor." But others were confused. Which Finn Taylor? Do we have another Finn Taylor in San Francisco? I'm talking about that useless matrilocal son-in-law. Those words made everyone turn their gazes to the man strolling in. Then, everyone started chiming in. That's right, it's him. I've been to the Larson family's residence and saw his wife slapping him. He's such a coward, how humiliating. Damian James patted off the dust on his clothes before walking in. Seeing that, someone asked out of curiosity, "What happened, Damian?" "Don't mention it, I have such bad luck. I met an idiot driving a Buick at the entrance. He was blocking the way, and I was so annoyed that I rammed into him with my Cayenne." Hearing that, everyone couldn't help but feel their blood boil. Not bad, Damian, you're a real man. That's right, Frank Lucas is the one holding this party. None of his guests would drive a Buick here. Damian James was confused too. That's right, I wonder which idiot drove that Buick. Just as Damian James was retelling his story, Finn Taylor walked over. "Was it you? Were you the one who rammed into my Buick? The car costs $20,000 cash or bank transfer." Damian James hadn't recognized Finn Taylor earlier. But now the latter stood right in front of him, he couldn't help but think that he looked familiar. "Don't tell me that you're that Finn Taylor." "Yes, you're right, it's me. Since you recognize me, you can send that money over to the Larson family's residence." Finn Taylor was about to leave after saying that. "Ha, you're just a piece of trash. Who are you to put on an act in front of me? Send it to the Larson family's residence. Are you selling your wife to me with that $20,000? But to be honest, your wife isn't bad. I met her once, and I think she looks good. I wonder if she'll be as good in bed." Thud. Before Damian James could finish his sentences, Finn Taylor had already punched him to the ground. This was completely unexpected. After all, the two of them were worlds apart. Finn Taylor was just a useless matrilocal son-in-law of the Larson family, while Damian James was the only son of the James family, a top-tier family in San Francisco. The James family was a top-tier family in San Francisco. It was like night and day when comparing the Larson family, a second-tier family, to them. Even the Larson family head Quince Larson had to bow to Damian James respectfully and treat him with full respect. Quince Larson would never even qualify to attend a party hosted by Frank Lucas or Damian James. Yet, that piece of trash Finn Taylor had beaten him up at their first meeting. Of course, Damian James wasn't one to be trifled with either. He quickly fought back against Finn Taylor. Naturally, he was no match for the latter. In the span of a few minutes, Damian James was beaten up into a pulp. He lay on the ground, having no strength to even groan out in pain. This was an incredulous sight. How dare you hit Damian James? You've landed yourself in hot soup. The Larson family is done for. Someone lashed out at Finn Taylor, not caring about what Damian James had done or said. "Oh, is that so? Are you going to take revenge for him then?" But of course, nobody dared to say a thing. What a joke. Take revenge for Damian James. While they all proclaimed to be brothers who valued loyalty, the truth was that they all cared most about their own self-interests. It was good enough that they didn't step on others when they were done. There was no way they'd help each other. Besides, how were they supposed to help him? By beating Finn Taylor up. Everyone had clearly seen just how skilled and powerful Finn Taylor was. If they were to step up and challenge him, they would be the next ones lying on the ground. Just then, Frank Lucas turned up. He had left to prepare for the party, and he was greeted by the sight of Damian James laying on the ground as soon as he returned. He didn't even know if the latter was dead or alive. What's going on? Frank Lucas was confused. Of course, someone quickly explained everything to him. "Frank Lucas, don't tell us that you invited this piece of trash. He drove a lousy Buick here and blocked the entrance. Damian James knocked into his car, and he tried to extort $20,000 from Damian. Fuck, it's just a wretched Buick. Damian didn't even ask him to pay for his Cayenne, but he beat Damian up. Frank Lucas, you have to handle this. If you don't settle this well, we won't attend your parties in the future." Frank Lucas was stunned. I had never left, but earlier on, the manager had come over to ask me to check on the dishes. I was away for less than 10 minutes, but it was within this short span of time that such troubles cropped up. Thinking about Finn Taylor's relationship with the Gold family, the Sullivan family, and Andre Cavill, he couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. Frank Lucas viciously punched the man who had still been yapping away moments earlier. Then, he walked up to Damian James and stomped on him. He even kicked the latter's crotch. Although Damian James was already on the verge of death, the crotch was a man's weakest spot. That kick elicited piercing screams from him. Frank Lucas immediately fell on his knees and kowtowed to Finn Taylor. Every kowtow drew blood from his forehead. "Mr. Taylor, this has nothing to do with me. It really has nothing to do with me." Frank Lucas was trembling in fear. "I've already offended Finn Taylor once. I don't know what he'd do if I were to offend him yet again because of something as ridiculous as this." Finn Taylor glanced at Frank Lucas before sighing. "I initially planned on training you. Within 3 years, everyone in San Francisco would have to respect you. Even Damian James's father would have to kowtow to you. Unfortunately, we're not fated." Finn Taylor had given Frank Lucas a chance. It was a pity that the latter hadn't cherished it. "Fix that Buick and send it back. You should know where to send it." With that, Finn Taylor left. Frank Lucas was still kneeling on the ground as tears flowed freely down his cheeks. "Finn Taylor had given me an opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime one. Andre Cavill had even said that he looked forward to drinking with me. But now, Damian James has ruined everything. Go to hell." Frank Lucas could no longer hold his emotions in and viciously kicked Damian James. He lashed out at the latter, not caring about if he would die if he went on or the consequences of Damian James dying. He was intent on killing Damian James and letting this bastard die a horrible death. After beating the other into a pulp, Frank Lucas stumbled out of the hotel. Then, he arrived at the entrance. The Buick was still there. It was toppled, and there were obvious scratches and dents on the car. Seeing Frank Lucas, the security officer immediately tried to suck up to him. "Brother Frank, you must be here to see that wretched Buick too. I already told that guy not to drive in, but he refused to listen to me. He even threw me his key and asked me to drive his car to the parking lot. Look at what's happened. He offended young Master James, and he's definitely facing his retribution now. Fuck, it's just a Buick. I don't know." Whoosh. Before that security officer could finish, Frank Lucas kicked him to the ground. "What's wrong with driving a Buick? Do you drive a very expensive car? You idiot, you're just a security officer. You're no different from a watchdog, so how dare you try to show off here? You should be welcoming all guests. Fuck, it's all your fault. If not for you, my future would have been unbridled. Mark my words, I'm going to kill you today." Frank Lucas had already lost all rationality. He started bashing up the security officer to vent his pent-up emotions. After leaving the hotel, Finn Taylor made a call to his wife. "Dear, I'll send you an address. Can you come over to pick me up?" Yvette Larson was currently getting a spa treatment done with her best friend. Before the former could reply, Clarine Landon snatched the phone over. "We're not free. I'll send you an address. Hurry over to pay for us." With that, she hung up. Finn Taylor was speechless, yet there was nothing he could do. He had no choice but to take a cab to the beauty salon. He was about to head upstairs when the receptionist glanced at him and said, "Sir, you can't head upstairs without a membership card." Finn Taylor rolled his eyes. "Did I wake up on the wrong side of the bed this morning? Why is everyone going against me today? Why does everyone think so highly of themselves?" Finn Taylor could hardly be bothered with that receptionist and headed upstairs. Seeing that he was about to barge in, the receptionist quickly tried to prevent him from doing so. "Sir, why don't you sign up for our membership card? We really can't allow you upstairs without one." "You'd better get out of my way," Finn Taylor said before walking up the stairs. Because she was unable to stop Finn Taylor, the receptionist quickly called for security. As soon as Finn Taylor walked up the stairs, he spotted his wife. At the same time, 4 security officers rushed up as well. "You're quite fast. You can't be up here if you don't have a membership card. It costs $500 to sign up, but it must be too much for you. Why would you even come to a beauty salon if you're so poor?" The security officers lashed out as they walked over, and hostility was evident in their eyes. "What's the matter?" Yvette Larson was confused. "All I had asked my husband to do was come over to pay for us. Why does it seem like he's gotten into a fight?" "Nothing much. Some people are just blind." Hearing that he was insulting them, the security officers immediately flared up. They charged at Finn Taylor with their batons. The latter couldn't help but feel speechless. "How dare you act up with your pathetic skills?" With just one punch, all 4 security officers flew backward. Crash! The 4 security officers caused everything in the room to topple over and fall to the ground. Because it had created such a din, the manager of the beauty salon quickly emerged. Seeing the mess on the floor, the manager turned hostile. "What's the matter? Mr. James?" He refused to sign up for a membership, barged in, and even started hitting us. After hearing the explanation from the security officers, that man glared coldly at Finn Taylor. How interesting. Who dares to kick up such a fuss in the James family's territory? The James family? Finn Taylor asked after hearing that. Don't tell me that Damian James is from your family. Oh, so you know our family. Since that's the case, you'd better kneel down at once and apologize. Bullshit. Finn Taylor was feeling annoyed exactly because of Damian James. Now, another person from the James family was trying to boss him around. The James family really is too bold. Finn Taylor struck that manager down with a punch, making the latter's face swell up at once. Fuck, how dare you look down on others? Finn Taylor's actions scared everyone in the beauty salon stiff. How dare you hit Gordon James? He's the most powerful amongst the branch families of the James family. You're done for. That's right, the James family is well known and powerful in San Francisco. You're playing with fire. Playing with fire. Finn Taylor sneered. I have never even cared about the James family. They are nothing to me. Knocking the James family down is playing with fire. It won't mean much to me even if I destroy the whole family. As Gordon James climbed up from the ground, he started calling out for someone. He wanted to call his uncle the family head over. There is someone here who has absolutely no respect for our family. Of course, Finn Taylor had no intention of dealing with such trivial matters, so he made a call to Frank Lucas. I'll give you one last chance. I'm at the James family's beauty salon. Deal with them for me, and I'll give you a pass. Frank Lucas was initially on the brink of tears. He had been like a rabid dog and had finally been able to quash the Jensen family. He had gone all out to get on Finn Taylor's good side, but Damian James had unexpectedly gotten in his way. Damian James had ruined his bright future, yet Finn Taylor had given him a glimpse of hope when he was in great despair. As long as he destroyed the James family, his future would be unbridled. Frank Lucas already hated that family to his core. Now that Finn Taylor had given his order, he naturally wasn't going to let them off. It wasn't long before the James family head Dylan James arrived at the beauty salon. Looking at Gordon Jameswo was lying on the ground, he couldn't help but feel frustrated. Along the way here, he had also received news that his son had been beaten up. In fact, his son seemed to be severely injured. Dylan James wondered why 2 members of his family had faced the same fate on the very same day. You're the one who beat my nephew up. Dylan James glared at Finn Taylor, his gaze filled with rage. The latter has not only beaten Gordon up, but he has also disrespected our family openly. I'm here, Mr. Taylor. Just then, Frank Lucas entered. He immediately bowed respectfully toward Finn Taylor. Then, he turned to Dylan James. Dylan James, you don't have to ask Mr. Taylor anything. I'll answer for it. Dylan James didn't recognize Finn Taylor, but he did recognize Frank Lucas. He remembered that Frank Lucas was on good terms with his other son Damian James. Frank, I remember that my son headed out to attend your party today. Now that he's injured, don't you think you owe me an explanation? Frank Lucas sneered. Explanation? Sure, what do you want? Name your requests. I'll make sure to destroy your entire family so that you'll never have any descendants to continue your family line. Why is Frank suddenly spouting such nonsense? Dylan James was taken aback. Frank Lucas, what's wrong with you? Is this how you should speak to your elders? Gordon Jameswo was still on the ground but in. Scram, you're in no place to be speaking now. Frank Lucas viciously kicked him in the face. Then, he started his revenge against the James family. As for Finn Taylor, he had already left a long time ago with his wife and her best friend. Why did you come out for a spa today? Finn Taylor asked as he glanced at the beauty salon. You still have the cheek to ask about that. Did you know that Yvette resigned from her job because of how much Quince Larson bullied her? Before Yvette Larson could say anything, Clarine Landon spoke up, lashing out at Finn Taylor right away. Although he was rendered speechless, Clarine Landon's words served as a reminder to him. She's right, Yvette isn't a pampered princess, he's a career woman. She must be out of place without a job. As such, Finn Taylor decided to acquire the Larson Corporation and make his wife the company's chairman. However, he couldn't afford to let her know of his plans as of yet. He had to settle everything before that. Ellipsis. The next day, Yvette Larson and her family started packing their things. Her grandma's birthday was coming up, and the whole family would be heading for San Diego for her birthday celebrations. Finn Taylor had already told his wife that he'd be busy and that he'd only join them 2 days later. Yvette Larson didn't think much of that. After all, she knew that he had many things to deal with, given his status. But never in a million years would she have guessed that he was working to acquire the Larson Corporation. Before Yvette Larson's family set off for San Diego, she received a call from her cousin Corinne James. "Yvette, make sure to bring Finn Taylor along for Grandma's birthday celebrations. Although he's a piece of trash, he's still your husband. We must celebrate as a family. Oh right, I got myself a new boyfriend. His name is Nathan Yates, he's an entrepreneur and earns about $500,000 a year. Yvette, you must help me evaluate him and see if he's suitable for marriage." Corinne James acted as though she cared a lot for her cousin and went on a long monologue. However, Yvette Larson could tell that the other had only said so much simply because she wanted to boast that she'd found herself a rich boyfriend. All right, I won't talk to you any longer, Yvette. I'm going out shopping with Nathan. Remember to bring Finn Taylor along. Maybe I'll get Nathan to recommend a good job to him." With that, she ended the call. Yvette Larson felt especially pleased every time she received a call from Corinne James. Without fail, the latter will always boast about herself. "She is always trying to one-up me, but I can understand why she would do so. After all, I've always done better than my cousin in every way while growing up. From our heights to our looks and even our studies, I've always beaten Corinne James." Of course, Yvette Larson hadn't done so on purpose. She was simply a natural at everything, but that had evoked jealousy in Corinne James, who was now looking to show off her superiority. SoundStories audiobooks. Upon hanging up the call, Yvette Larson immediately told her mother about it. Linda James was slightly annoyed once she heard what had happened. "I treated Corinne James so well when she was younger. I didn't expect her to be such an ingrate." Just then, Frances Larson spoke up. "Isn't everyone from your family an ingrate?" Linda James knew exactly who her husband was talking about. It was none other than Karen James's family. When Karen James had visited with her family previously, she had even borrowed $30,000. Yet, they hadn't even made so much as a call after returning home. It seemed as though nothing had even happened. Such relatives were truly absurd. Of course, Karen James's husband and son were equally absurd. Her husband Larry Shaw was an alcoholic. He was sure to get drunk and kick up a huge fuss at every family gathering. As for her son Weston Shaw was a grown man, yet he was still a mommy's boy. Forget that he was incapable of doing anything on his own, but he could never go 3 sentences without mentioning his mom. It was bizarre. "Mom, let's not talk about that. Pack up your things, and we'll leave in the afternoon. Finn will join us in a few days' time." The moment Linda James heard that her son-in-law wouldn't be joining them right away, she panicked. "No, how could Finn Taylor not go with us? Isn't your grandma his grandma too? It makes no sense that he's not going to celebrate her birthday." Yvette Larson and her father looked at her with strange gazes. It seemed as though pigs could fly. In the past, Linda James had always refused to bring Finn Taylor along to San Diego even when he had asked. But now, she had taken the initiative to invite him. "Why are you looking at me like that? I think of Finn Taylor as part of our family now. Do you have any problems with that?" Yvette Larson would be a fool if she believed her mom. It was obvious that it wasn't because the latter now thought of Finn Taylor as her family. It was only because her husband now had an extraordinary status that her mom wanted to show him off, but that wasn't a bad thing either. The James family had always looked down on Finn Taylor, thinking of him as a piece of trash. This time, it'd be good to show those arrogant people just how outstanding and brilliant Finn Taylor truly was. "Mom, don't overthink it. It's not that Finn isn't going, but he's just a little busy. He'll join us in a bit." Even though her daughter had said so, Linda James still felt uneasy. As such, she approached her son-in-law and asked, "Finn Taylor, are you really going to San Diego?" "Of course. What's the matter?" Finn Taylor was confused. In the past, Linda James had never allowed me to tag along even when I asked. But this year, she had come to look for me when I'm simply going to join them a few days later. "Oh, that's a promise. You have to turn up." "All right, I promise you." Only after getting a promise from her son-in-law did Linda James leave in satisfaction. That afternoon, Yvette Larson's family left for San Diego. As for Finn Taylor, he headed to Logan Yates's residence. He was going to acquire the Larson Corporation under Logan Yates's name this time. Hunter Sullivan had ended his collaboration with the Larson family, while Alexander Scott's relationship with Eleanor Larson had ended on a bad note. As for Zachary Kennedy, his forte lay in technology. As such, it seemed like Logan Yates was the best man for the job. Acquire the Larson family's company within a month. Get someone to head the company and then hire Yvette Larson. Let her handle all of the company's projects, don't expose yourself. Logan Yates took every word to heart. At that very moment, Quince Larson was at the entrance of Xander Corporation. Because the Sullivan family had ended their collaboration with them, the Larson family was on the brink of bankruptcy. He had seen a glimpse of hope because of Eleanor Larson, but he had never expected his cousin to do such a shameless thing. Left with no other choice, he could only try his luck at Xander Corporation in hopes that he could salvage their collaboration. The moment Hunter Sullivan walked out of the office building, Quince Larson fell on his knees. Even so, the former didn't pay him any heed and simply walked off. As he watched Hunter Sullivan walking off into the distance, Quince Larson felt indignant. What's so good about Yvette Larson? Why does Hunter Sullivan insist on terminating the contract without her around? Quince Larson thought of a possibility. It seems very likely that Yvette has already crawled into Hunter Sullivan's bed. To be honest, my cousin is beautiful. Someone like Hunter Sullivan has no lack for anything, but men like that usually have wives at home that are usually old and haggard. That's why he would be tempted by women like Yvette. However, Yvette isn't the only woman on this planet. Eleanor isn't much worse off than Yvette. As such, Quince Larson came up with a crazy idea. He drove all the way to Eleanor Larson's house and then dumped some things in front of his cousin. As the latter looked through them, she was dumbfounded. Eleanor Larson opened the box and was stunned. Cat ears, a nurse uniform, a leather whip, black stockings, and candles. What are you trying to do? Eleanor Larson was rendered speechless. Quince has to be crazy. Is he planning on doing something to me? We are cousins. Don't overthink it. I want you to wear these and look for Hunter Sullivan. Why would I look for him? Eleanor Larson was still confused about what her cousin had in mind. What do you think? Fuck, I'm not going. Eleanor Larson was resolute. Who does Quince think I am? Fine, you can choose not to go. Without the Sullivan family's collaboration, the Larson family really will be done for. Someone is trying to acquire the Larson Corporation, and I'm already in talks with them. What you did is enough for me to kick you out of the family. If you're really kicked out of the family, don't even dream of getting a cent of that money. Eleanor Larson had been fierce just moments earlier, but her cousin's words broke her. Fine, I'll go, but I have my requests too. Don't you dare say a word about this. Also, I want 1/3 of the proceeds if you really do sell the company. A quarter. Fine, a quarter. Just like that, Quince Larson and Eleanor Larson came to a consensus. That night, Eleanor Larson put on the nurse uniform and cat ears and waited furtively at the foot of Pacific Heights for Hunter Sullivan with a leather whip in her hand. Hunter Sullivan's car was stopped, and he rolled down the window. Mr. Sullivan, do you have some time for a drink together? He looked at Eleanor Larson absurdly. What are you trying to do? Mr. Sullivan, can't you tell what I'm trying to do when I'm already dressed up like this? Hunter Sullivan was stunned. I know why Quince Larson came to look for me today, and I know he wants to continue our collaboration. I already said that it's never going to happen. Of course, I know that Quince Larson must have asked you to come here too. The only reason he's doing that is that he thinks that Yvette Larson's my mistress. I'm telling you right now that this isn't the case. You'll never be able to imagine how frightening Yvette Larson truly is. Please scram, you disgust me, you're just a whore who got an abortion. Hunter Sullivan had been too straightforward with his words so much so that he had utterly humiliated Eleanor Larson. Hunter Sullivan rolled his window up and prepared to leave. But Eleanor Larson was indignant. My dignity has just been trampled on, yet Hunter Sullivan wants to leave just like that. There is no way I'm going to let that happen. Hunter Sullivan, what do you mean? You'd better tell me. Eleanor Larson banged on the window, refusing to let the other leave. Hunter Sullivan rolled his window down yet again. He glared at the other and spat at her. Scram, you bitch, now that you've touched my car, I have to get it washed tomorrow. Who are you to demand that of me? Do you really want me to call for security and get reporters here to expose you? Hearing that, Eleanor Larson was horrified. No way, if the reporters come here, I'd be tomorrow's headlines in this get-up. I'd be humiliated. Eleanor Larson was scared stiff, and she quickly ran off. She rushed to Quince Larson's house in a rage. Without saying a word, she slapped her cousin. I was downright humiliated today. It doesn't matter what status Quince holds. He's going down with me. Ellipsis. San Diego. Seeing that Yvette Larson's family had arrived, Corinne James gave them a warm welcome. Yet, She didn't see any signs of Finn Taylor. Yvette, didn't you agree to bring Finn Taylor along? Oh, he's busy. He'll be here in a few days' time. A few days' time. Corinne James was speechless. That's what the Larson family has said over the past few years, but Finn Taylor has never once shown up. This time is probably going to be no different. Corinne James was naturally annoyed that Finn Taylor hadn't turned up. It wasn't because she liked the latter but because she wanted to compare her boyfriend to the other. Finn Taylor wasn't outstanding at all. In other words, he was a piece of trash. Aren't you very amazing, Yvette Larson? Aren't you very outstanding? So why did you get married to a piece of trash like that? Perhaps this was the only way Corinne James would ever beat her cousin, and that was why she always tried to find ways to show off. Hello, Yvette Larson, right? I'm Nathan Yates, Corinne James's boyfriend. A mature-looking man beside Corinne James introduced himself. Oh right, I haven't introduced you. He's my boyfriend Nathan Yates. He's an entrepreneur, so he doesn't earn much, only about $500,000 every year. It was obvious that Corinne James was boasting. To that, Yvette Larson was speechless. Oh, that's little. You'd better work hard, Nathan. Now that Linda James was living in a multi-million-dollar mansion, $500,000 seemed like peanuts to her. That was why she dared to say that. But that infuriated Corinne James. Auntie, how could you say that? $500,000 might not be much, but it's more than what Finn Taylor earns at the very least. How much does that useless matrilocal son-in-law earn? Nothing. That's not true. Finn Taylor can easily earn $15 million. $15 million. When Corinne James heard that, she nearly burst out into laughter. This family isn't afraid of telling such ridiculous lies. Their family would probably never be able to earn $15 million in their whole lives, yet they dare to say that Finn Taylor can easily earn $15 million. What a joke. But Linda James couldn't do anything if others didn't want to believe her. Sometimes, even the truth seemed absurd when it exceeded others' expectations. Where are Uncle and Auntie? Yvette Larson didn't want to continue with this topic. As such, she purposely steered the conversation away from it. My parents went on a holiday. Nathan booked a tour to Sonia for my parents. I don't know how much it cost exactly, but I think it was about $3,000. I think they're staying in a 5-star hotel. Oh right, Auntie, since Finn Taylor can easily earn $15 million, has he ever brought you to a 5-star hotel? Linda James was honest. No. Hearing that, Corinne James started boasting yet again. What? Didn't I say that Finn Taylor is a piece of trash? He can easily earn $15 million, but he's never brought you to a 5-star hotel. Earlier on, Corinne James had been annoyed when her aunt suddenly said that Finn Taylor could easily earn $15 million. She couldn't help but feel that her aunt was making things up just to put herself on a pedestal. It's obvious that Auntie can't beat me. What is the point of making up such lies? Look, she's been exposed right away. Oh right, Corinne James. Does a 5-star villa cost $15 million? The house we're living in right now is worth at least $15 million. Just as Corinne James was celebrating her victory, Linda James shot back. This nearly choked the former. Even an entire 5-star hotel building would probably cost less than $15 million. A house would definitely cost much less than that, yet she's saying that her house is worth $15 million. Auntie, stop lying, I'm going to die from laughter. Linda James was slightly stumped as she looked at her niece. I'm not making things up. Why don't I show you photos of our house? Linda James had many photos of their house on her phone. She was about to take it out when her daughter stopped her from doing so. Yvette Larson whispered to her mother, "Do you want Corinne James to borrow money from you too?" At the mention of money, Linda James's heart ached. She knew that she'd never get her money back. To avoid such a situation, it'd be best for her not to reveal those photos. Well, where are the photos you were talking about, Auntie? Why don't you let me see them? There was no way Corinne James was going to believe that Yvette Larson's family lived in a mansion. That was why she made such a comment. But Linda James waved her off. I don't have any, I forgot to take them. Corinne James chuckled. How childish. Before long, it was time for dinner. Corinne James went on, introducing each dish to her cousin. This is caviar from Australia. This is swordfish from the Pacific Ocean. This is cod from the Atlantic Ocean. Ellipsis. As she introduced each dish, she picked some up and placed them on Yvette Larson's plate. She even told the latter to have her fill since she had already gotten sick of eating such rich food. But Corinne James's heart naturally bled as she said so. There was no way she'd ever get sick of eating such food. Even she had only eaten such a spread once or twice in her entire life, yet she acted as though she ate such luxurious dishes all the time and no longer took a fancy to them. Just then, Yvette Larson's phone rang. Before she could pick it up, Corinne James snatched it away from her. "Oh, it's Finn Taylor. Don't say anything, he'll take the call for you." With that, she accepted the call. "Finn Taylor, Grandma is celebrating her birthday. How dare you not show up?" Finn Taylor was stunned. "Why isn't the person on the line my wife?" But hearing the other's words, she has to be from the James family. But who is it? Finn Taylor racked his brains and finally thought of someone. Corinne James. Oh, it's Corinne James. Am I interrupting something? Who doesn't know that you're just a useless matrilocal son-in-law who freeloads off your wife's family? What could you possibly be busy with? Are you negotiating a multi-million-dollar project or buying a $15 million villa? What is she trying to say? Finn Taylor was dumbfounded. What do you mean? Nothing much. I'm just trying to tell you to hurry on over. Alright, I'm almost done with whatever I have to do. I should be able to get there by tomorrow. Alright, that's a promise. With that, Corinne James took the liberty to end the call for her cousin. Yvette Larson was at a loss for words at the other's bossiness. Ellipsis. San Francisco. Finn Taylor looked into the distance. It seemed like he could even spot Los Angeles in the distance. He spotted a beautiful woman, Chloe Yates. He made a cologne he hadn't made in almost a decade. It had been such a long time that even Finn Taylor wondered if the other still remembered him. In fact, he didn't even know if she still used the same number. The call got through, and he heard a gentle and soothing voice on the other end. "Hello, I'm Chloe Yates. Are you looking for me?" Finn Taylor was stunned as he said, "I thought you changed your number." The woman on the other end of the call seemed overwhelmed with emotions. "Hey, are you Mr. Taylor?" "Yes, it's me, Mr. Taylor. You still remember me. You didn't forget about me." Finn Taylor felt embarrassed. "If not for the fact that I have to go to Los Angeles, I might have forgotten all about her." More than a decade ago, he had spotted Chloe Yates in Los Angeles. At that time, she had been busking. Beside her was a board that said "Busking to Grieve." At that time, Finn Taylor had given whatever he had on him to her. He even told her that he hoped she would live well. It was important for her to have some self-respect. Busking wasn't a long-term solution. One day, she might very well fall into a trap. At that time, Chloe Yates had thanked Finn Taylor and had given him her phone number. She even told him that she'd give him a surprise when he visited Los Angeles again. Now that a decade had passed, Chloe Yates had become somewhat of a legend in Los Angeles. With the money that Finn Taylor had given her, she had started an embroidery business. Women knew other women best. Someone as beautiful as Chloe Yates knew exactly how to dress to accentuate women's figures. That was how she successfully made her name in the industry. As years went by, Chloe Yates gradually expanded her business into other industries as well. She had both capability and luck on her side, and she was successful in each and every one of her endeavors. Now, she could hold her own among the business circle of Los Angeles. If anyone dared to go against her, she had enough power to destroy their family within 3 days. Yet, something that nobody understood was why she was still single even though she was so beautiful and successful. The reason was simple. She was waiting for Finn Taylor. She had waited over 10 years for him. "Mr. Taylor, why are you looking for me?" Chloe Yates asked emotionally. No matter what Finn Taylor asked for, she would go to all lengths to fulfill his requests, even if it meant giving herself up. "I'll be going to Los Angeles tomorrow. Can I pick you up?" It was a question. Chloe Yates said so as though she was making a request. Nobody in Los Angeles was deserving of that attitude. Yes, Finn Taylor wasn't very familiar with Los Angeles, so it wouldn't be bad if someone were to pick him up. "That's great." Chloe Yates was overwhelmed with emotions and started picking out her clothes the moment she ended the call. Every piece looked good, but not a single of them satisfied her. In the end, she picked out a piece of clothing that she had worn more than 10 years ago, red dress. The next day, dressed in a red dress, Chloe Yates patiently waited for Finn Taylor just as she had 10 years earlier. Chloe Yates had already established herself in Los Angeles. As such, her every move caught the attention of others. They couldn't help but wonder whom she was waiting for. Logically speaking, nobody in Los Angeles deserves to be picked up by Chloe Yates personally. This can only mean that she's picking up a big boss from somewhere else. But where would that be? New York, Chicago. Amidst the frenzied discussions, Finn Taylor appeared. The moment Chloe Yates saw the other, she was overwhelmed with emotions. More than a decade had passed since she had seen him. Besides, Finn Taylor had been a kid at that time. Now that so many years had gone by, it was only natural that he had undergone some changes. Nonetheless, Chloe Yates had successfully recognized Finn Taylor. Chloe Yates rushed over emotionally, reaching out to hug the latter. I'm married," Finn Taylor said blandly. He had never expected Chloe Yates to be so unreserved, so he hadn't prepared himself for her to rush over and hug him. Chloe Yates was dumbfounded. "I've waited for him for more than 10 years, yet this is what I've gotten in return." However, she didn't dare to blame him for that either. She knew full well that she had only gotten to where she was today because of Finn Taylor. Chloe Yates let go and pointed to her car. "Mr. Taylor, I'll take you for a meal." The other nodded. After getting in, he said, "Call me Finn Taylor." "All right, Mr. Taylor." Chloe Yates would always tell her subordinates to address her by her name, yet she would be terribly displeased if they were to do so. Someone had filmed everything that happened at the Los Angeles train station. Very quickly, someone posted the photo of Chloe Yates hugging Finn Taylor, and it was circulated amongst the business circle. Everyone was in a heated discussion over who that man was. No matter who he was, they were sure he wasn't an ordinary figure, given his relationship with Chloe Yates. As a newbie entrepreneur in Los Angeles, it was only natural that Nathan Yates kept abreast of such news and tried to gain connections amongst the business circle. It wasn't long before he spotted that picture too. He was overwhelmed with emotions. In reality, he had fallen for Chloe Yates before. It was rare for men not to like such a gorgeous and successful woman. While everyone was still chatting, only Nathan Yates's eyes were glued to his phone, his gaze even a little dark. This attracted everyone's attention. "What's with you, Nathan? Did something happen to your company? Are you guys going bankrupt?" Linda James's words provoked Corinne James, but even the latter was curious about what was going on with her boyfriend. She snatched the phone over, only to see the photo her boyfriend had been staring at. "Who's this?" Corinne James saw a beautiful lady, one that was 1,000 times more beautiful than Heron, couldn't help but feel jealous. Chloe Yates, the president of Los Angeles Business Association. She picked someone up at the train station today and even hugged him. Oh, Chloe Yates, no wonder I thought she looked familiar." With that, Corinne James handed the phone over to her cousin. "Yvette, Chloe Yates is beautiful, isn't she? She's Nathan's cousin. We must get together for a meal someday." Nathan Yates was taken aback when he heard his girlfriend's words. Chloe Yates was an impressive figure in the business circle of Los Angeles. As for him, he was only a newbie entrepreneur. They had nothing to do with each other, yet Corinne James had claimed that they were cousins. If Chloe Yates found out about it, that might very well be the end of him. Although Nathan Yates had snatched his phone back, Yvette Larson had clearly seen the photo. Chloe Yates's face had been clearly shown. Although outsiders couldn't tell who that man was from the side profile alone, she knew full well who it was: Finn Taylor. While she did feel a little jealous, she chose to believe in her husband. If he had intended on cheating on her, he would have divorced her a long time ago. Besides, why was he putting up with being called a piece of trash? It was all for her sake. To be honest, Yvette Larson was slightly curious about how her husband had gotten to know Chloe Yates. "Why do I have the feeling that Finn knows all the most prominent figures around town?" When Frida Cameron barged into number 1 Pacific Heights and her husband fought back, Yvette Larson had already understood that her spouse wasn't just an ordinary person. However, she didn't know of his true power or skills. Corinne James was bragging about her life, so much so that it seemed a little absurd at times. "Yvette, when is Finn Taylor coming?" Without Finn Taylor around, Corinne James felt as though her boasting was useless. That was why she had asked this question. Yvette Larson simply answered, "Don't worry, he's in Los Angeles. He'll be here soon." Chloe Yates brought Finn Taylor back home. It was a villa built in an antique style. As he walked along the path, Finn Taylor couldn't help but nod. "Not bad, how interesting." Finn Taylor truly felt that this place felt good. Of course, Chloe Yates's heart leapt with joy upon hearing the other's praises. "Oh right, Mr. Taylor. Why are you in Los Angeles? Do you need my help? I do have some influence here in Los Angeles." Chloe Yates didn't dare to say that she had the entire business circle of Los Angeles in her hands. That would simply be embarrassing herself in front of Finn Taylor. "Not for now. However, it seems like you're not fully using your talent here in Los Angeles. If you need any help, you can always look for me in San Francisco. Of course, if you want to expand your business even further to New York, Chicago, Seattle, or Washington, you just have to let me know. I'll introduce you to someone." Chloe Yates had been certain that the other had an extraordinary status, but she had never expected it to be that extraordinary. Yet, It seemed logical if she were to think about the aura he had exuded even 10 years ago. After having his meal, Finn Taylor headed to the James family's residence. As soon as he arrived, Corrine James leapt up from her seat and gave him a warm welcome. "You're finally here, Finn Taylor. I thought that something happened to you in San Francisco, and I almost got my boyfriend to drive his Bentley over to look for you." When she said the word, Bentley, Corrine James purposely raised her voice. However, the Bentley wasn't theirs, they had only rented it. There was no way they'd be able to afford a Bentley on an annual salary of $500,000. They had really gone all out to put up this show. "Finn Taylor, come on in. Let me introduce you to my boyfriend. His name is Nathan, and he runs his own company. He isn't very impressive and only earns about $500,000 a year. Of course, you still can't compare to Nathan. You must work hard because you can't possibly remain a useless matrilocal son-in-law and let Yvette support you for the rest of your life." Finn Taylor had already known that he'd be subjected to such awful words if he were to show up at the James family's residence. However, he had never thought that it'd come so quickly. But $500,000 was nothing but spare change to him. As such, he merely acknowledged her coldly. Seeing Finn Taylor's indifference and no jealousy on her cousin's face, Corrine James was annoyed. Thus, she pouted. "Yvette, aren't you jealous of my life at all?" Yvette Larson didn't know whether to laugh or flare up. "Why should I be jealous of your life? I live such a comfortable and luxurious lifestyle, and my boyfriend earns $500,000 a year. Don't you think you should be jealous of all that?" Corrine James thought that she had found something she could brag about, yet Linda James cut in. "But $500,000 a year won't buy you a multi-million-dollar mansion." Corrine James was on the verge of exploding. "I've found myself such an outstanding boyfriend. Shouldn't Yvette Larson's family look at me in awe and envy? Why are they behaving like this? Auntie, do you really think that you're living in a multi-million-dollar mansion? Stop lying." Oh, afraid that Corrine James would borrow money from her too, she quickly kept quiet. But keeping quiet made Corrine James rage even more. What kind of people are they? Are they really not embarrassed from having a useless matrilocal son-in-law? Do they have no shame at all? Corrine James returned to her room and flung her pillow on the ground in anger. "Why should you get angry? They said that on purpose to make you upset. You fell for their tricks." Nathan Yates picked up the pillow and comforted his girlfriend. "That makes sense." That afternoon, Corrine James received a call saying that her father and her mother Henry James and Serene Edwards were back. They had bought bags and bags of things and wanted their daughter to pick them up. After hanging up, she quickly announced that Nathan Yates was going to pick her parents up. She didn't waste a chance to start bragging once more. "Yvette, we're going to the train station to pick my parents up. Do you want to come along? It's a Bentley, and I guess you've never sat in one." Yvette Larson wasn't Corrine James and wouldn't do something just for the sake of looking good. Since it was true she had never been in a Bentley, she very simply replied, "No, I haven't." Because of that reply, Corrine James felt as though she had achieved victory and was on cloud nine. "I knew it, you definitely haven't sat in a luxury car before. After all, there's no way you'd have the chance for that after getting married to a piece of trash like Finn Taylor." Yvette Larson was speechless. "But I've driven my own car here." "Your car? What kind of car could your family possibly own?" No sooner had Corrine James finished her sentence than Yvette Larson took out her car key. The logo was obviously BM's. Corrine James felt as though she had been slapped in the face. "But how can that be? I know of their family's conditions, so how could they possibly afford a BMW?" But after thinking about how she had rented a Bentley, she was sure that the other had rented their car too. "Yvette Larson, that's so lame. It's not like we don't have a car to pick you up. Are you trying to make me look bad by renting a BMW to drive here?" Renting. Yvette Larson wondered what went through her cousin's mind. Why would she suddenly think of that? "No, this is our family's car. Forget it. Do you really think that I don't know about your family's financial situation? Forget it, I'm going to pick my parents up." Corrine James had intended on bringing her cousin along, but she now gave up on that idea. The latter was perfectly fine with that. She didn't even want to go anyway. Not long after, Corrine James returned with her parents. Their daughter had told them all about how Yvette Larson's family had rented a BMW for the sake of looking good. As such, Henry James started saying, "Yvette, I'm not trying to scold you, but you're too insensible. Coming to our house is like coming home. If you need a ride, you could have just let us know. Nathan would have driven the Bentley to fetch you guys, so why did you have to rent a BMW? You could have saved that money to buy your mom some makeup products. Look, Your mom is only a year older than your auntie, but she looks so haggard. Your auntie has such a good life, and Nathan always sends your auntie makeup products from time to time. That's how she maintained her beauty. Sigh, but I guess your family has no choice either. After all, you're married to a piece of trash. We all know just how useless he is. It's been hard on all of you. Like father, like daughter. Corinne James boasted nonstop, and her father was naturally no better. His sense of superiority was evident in every sentence. Actually, Finn Taylor is quite good. Our family is doing quite well, uncle. You silly child, there's no need to hide anything from me. I know full well what kind of person Finn Taylor is. Yvette Larson hated her cousin's family looking down on her husband, so she tried to speak up for him. But Henry James was so sure that Finn Taylor was nothing but a piece of trash. Dad, did you know that Auntie even said that they live in a multi-million-dollar mansion? Disdain was evident in Corinne James's eyes as she said that. Henry James's face darkened immediately. Linda, how old are you? Why are you still lying like a kid? A multi-million-dollar mansion, given your family's situation, it'd be difficult to even buy a second-hand property. But our family is different. Nathan earns so much a year, so I'm sure he'll buy us a villa when the time comes. Linda James was never one to be trifled with. The moment she heard her brother say that, she flared up. What do you mean, Henry James? Why do you make it sound as though our family is worse off than yours? Come, let me show you my house. Linda James was going all out. Anyway, their family didn't owe her brother's family anything. Why should they act so arrogantly and even look down on them? She whipped out her phone. The photos clearly showed Linda James in a mansion. Everything in the photos was luxurious and expensive. Henry James's face distorted, and his expression soured as he browsed the photos. Corinne James, unwilling to lose out, said, Auntie, I didn't expect your family to go so far. Not only did you guys rent a BMW, but you even found a way to get into a mansion to take such photos. Well, do you have such photos in your phone too, Yvette? Why don't you let me see them? But so what if I see them? Will that change your family's circumstances? Anyone can tell how different your family is from ours. Just look at Nathan Hayes wearing a submariner. What about you, Finn Taylor? Finn Taylor's wrists were empty. Corinne James went on, you said that your family lives in a multi-million-dollar mansion, but why does everything you guys use look so ordinary? There's not even a branded good in sight. Seeming to have found solid evidence, Corinne James got more excited as she went on. To that, Finn Taylor was slightly speechless. Before coming for this gathering, I got Hunter Sullivan to get in touch with designers in Milan. These clothes are custom made. Every piece is unique and can't be found anywhere else, yet they have become so worthless in Corinne James's eyes. However, even Yvette Larson didn't know anything about this. She wasn't a spoiled princess, and she had believed her husband when he said that he had gotten the tailor next door to make these clothes for them. Henry James shook his head before leaving. Corinne James burst out into laughter, knowing that she had claimed the victory. But Yvette Larson wasn't the slightest bit bothered because she knew in her heart just how well she lived. It didn't matter what others thought about her. Only Linda James still felt disgruntled. But since Finn Taylor hadn't said anything, she was too afraid to speak up too. At lunch, Corinne James suddenly said, Yvette, I might have been a little brusque in the morning. I reflected on my actions. You're my cousin, so how could I speak to you like that? Misunderstanding that her cousin had repented, Yvette Larson assured the other that it was fine. It was normal for relatives to quibble sometimes. Oh right, Yvette, we're going to the mall later. Your clothes do look a little shabby. You should get a few new outfits so that Grandma will be happy when she sees you. Of course, Corinne James was going to attend her grandma's birthday celebrations in a new outfit. It was just that she hadn't bought any. It wasn't because she couldn't afford it but because she was waiting for her cousin. She wanted to take the latter along shopping. Then, she would purchase some expensive outfits to evoke some jealousy in Yvette Larson. Yvette Larson waved her off. There's no need, my clothes are perfectly fine. What about a few bags? I think your bag looks quite old. Talking about that, Yvette Larson suddenly thought of the $30,000 bag that her husband had given her. Because of the misunderstanding between them, she had thrown that bag away. Now, she regretted it tremendously. Let's go have a look then. Yvette Larson had wanted to refuse, but her husband cut in. It's true that Yvette's bag is a little shabby. Since she has already thrown away the previous one, I'll simply buy a new one for her. Corinne James felt annoyed that her cousin's spouse had suddenly interrupted the conversation. Who are you to speak? You're just a useless matrilocal son-in-law. Forget it, I'll let you off this time because you helped me. After lunch, the James family sat there without moving. Not a single person was prepared to wash the dishes. Henry James turned straight to Finn Taylor. Hey, Finn Taylor, why aren't you doing anything? Aren't you used to washing and cooking at home? Why are you still here? Hurry up and put away the dishes. Yvette Larson could no longer hold it in. Since when are guests supposed to work while the hosts rest? It would be fine if the hosts worked and the guests helped out, but the James family is going too far. They feel that it's only right for them to bully my family. Uncle, don't test your luck. Yvette, how can you say that? I'm just asking him to wash the dishes. What's wrong with that? Wash my car then. The moment Yvette Larson took out her car key, Henry James's expression darkened. Yvette, look at what you're saying. My dad is your uncle. How can you get your elders to work for you? You wash it then. She handed the key to Corinne James. Ever since the latter had gotten together with Nathan Yates, she had never done any household chores. Asking her to wash a car was like asking for her life now. Yvette Larson, don't push it. Oh, it's only natural for you to get Finn Taylor to wash the dishes, but I'm asking for too much to get your family to wash my car. Your family really is going overboard. Just like that, the meal ended on a sour note. Yvette Larson had thought that her shopping trip in the afternoon would probably be cancelled since things had progressed to this point, yet her cousin took the initiative to look for her that very afternoon. Yvette Larson was speechless. What's going on in her mind? She then saw the entire James family dressed to the nines, ready to leave. Yvette Larson was at a loss for words. What is their entire family up to? However, they were relatives after all. It was good enough that they were able to put on an act and not fight with each other. As such, Yvette Larson's family headed out too. The car drove along and headed for Chloe Mall. Corinne James pointed at the mall. Isn't it huge and gorgeous? The mall's boss is Chloe Yates' me boyfriend's cousin. Corinne James had said so much just to brag about that, but Nathan Yates couldn't help but feel awkward whenever he heard that. No matter how hard I work in this life or the next, I'd never match up to Chloe Yates. In fact, we have no relation at all. If Chloe Yates learns of this, I'd be done for. Thankfully, Yvette Larson's family is from San Francisco, so they surely don't know anything about that. It was true that Yvette Larson's family didn't know anything about that, but Finn Taylor was different. He knew full well who Chloe Yates was. He was an orphan with no relatives. Corinne James's lie was downright ridiculous, but it was so trivial that Finn Taylor couldn't even be bothered to expose her lies. The group walked into the mall. Since Corinne James was familiar with the place, she led her cousin to a boutique selling bags. Yvette, look at this bag. What do you think of it? It's meant for sisters. Let's each get one. Yvette Larson glanced at the price, $1,000. She quickly shook her head. Yvette Larson didn't like the bag's design, much less carrying one that matched her cousin's. It would be a waste of money to buy a bag like this. No, I don't like it. Corinne James wanted to sneer when she heard that excuse. Do you really not like it? Can you not afford it? Which woman doesn't like branded bags? Yvette, you shouldn't do that. When women buy bags, we shouldn't look at whether we like the bag. We should only look at the prices. Although it isn't a top-range one, it's still decent. Every woman must have one like this. With that, she turned to Nathan Yates. Don't you think so, Nathan? Nathan Yates nodded and smiled. That's right, it's just $1,000. You can buy it if you like it. His words pleased Corinne James. Did you hear that, Yvette? You should have married someone like Nathan. He'd buy you anything you like. Finn Taylor, hurry up and buy Yvette one. Finn Taylor picked up the bag and turned to his wife. Do you like it? Before Yvette Larson could say anything, Corinne James cut in. Why are you asking so many questions? Just buy it. Look, Nathan didn't even ask any questions. By this time, Nathan Yates had already swiped his card and bought the bag. Corinne James swung the bag over her shoulder in a victorious manner. See, men should be generous like him. But I really don't like this bag. Without her cousin around, Yvette Larson might have considered getting the bag. But now that Corinne James had mocked and ridiculed her, she had grown disdainful of that bag. There was no way she was going to buy it. Yvette, do you not like it, or can you not afford it? If you can't afford it, just admit to it. I won't laugh at you for it. Why don't you pick something you like? I'll ask Nathan to buy it for you. As she said that, Corinne James's heart bled. It's too good a deal for Yvette Larson, but I have no other choice since I'm putting on an act. Oh, all right then, I admit that our family can't afford this bag. Can I really choose a bag and get Nathan Yates to pay for me? I've already given my word. Besides, Yvette Larson has even admitted that their family can't afford a bag. Could I possibly go back on my word? Of course. Take your pick, Nathan will buy it for you. Corinne James gritted her teeth and forced those words out. She then saw Yvette Larson walking toward the premium section of the boutique. Fuck, why is she going there? This boutique sold more affordable bags, as well as more premium ones. A normal bag would cost a few thousand at the very most, but the premium ones cost at least tens of thousands. Is Yvette Larson going to be so shameless to ask for one from the premium collection? How about this? Yvette Larson pointed at one of the bags. This bag looked similar to the one Finn Taylor had given her, but it was of better quality. They were obviously from the same series, but this was simply the more premium version. Corinne James flared up and immediately lashed out at her cousin. Yvette Larson, can you get any more shameless? I said that I was going to give you a bag, and you chose a $50,000 one. Why don't you rob a bank instead? Yvette Larson sighed. Oh, you can't afford it. Never mind then. I said I didn't need you to give me one, but you insisted. Isn't it awkward now that you can't afford it? Corinne James was at a loss for words. It's not that I can't afford it, but who are you for Nathan to give you a $50,000 bag? Corinne James was on the verge of exploding. Is she really too poor? Greed probably got the better of my cousin earlier when I said that I would give her a bag. Otherwise, there's no way she would have asked for that $50,000 bag. But Finn Taylor walked up to the display and picked the bag up. He looked at his wife and asked seriously, "Do you like it?" Yes. Yvette Larson didn't try to hide it, and she had always been honest toward her spouse. Finn Taylor nodded and was about to pay for it when a beautiful lady walked up. Hello, you two look very familiar. Take this bag as my gift to you. It was none other than Chloe Yates. It was by chance that she had bumped into Finn Taylor and the rest. Because Finn Taylor was in town, she wanted to get herself a new outfit and had decided to come to the mall. It was purely by coincidence that she had run into Finn Taylor here. That's all right. Finn Taylor shook his head and refused the offer. Oh, what a pity. However, I won't go back on my words. Hey, when they buy a bag later, give them another for free. As Chloe Yates said those words, Nathan Yates was scared stiff as he stood by the side. He didn't dare to make a peep. He clearly remembered the lies that Corinne James had spoken earlier. If Chloe Yates were to learn of those lies, I'd be done for. But just then, Linda James spoke up. Oh, you're Chloe Yates. Nice to meet you. I'm Nathan Yates's elder aunt. I heard that you're his cousin or family then. Chloe Yates's gaze hardened. Nathan Yates, who is he? I don't have a cousin like that. Is someone trying to use my name to get business in Los Angeles? It seems like I'll have to get my people to kick that Nathan Yates out of the business circle here. At that moment, Nathan Yates was on the brink of tears. It was completely possible for his company to be blacklisted with Chloe Yates's command. Then, his future would be ruined. Linda James knew her niece all too well, and that was why she hadn't believed the latter when she had first said so. Now, I'm going to use this opportunity to crush Corinne James and Nathan Yates all at once. Nathan Yates was on the verge of bursting into tears. He didn't want to be blacklisted by Chloe Yates. As such, he stood forward. Ms. Yates, I'm Nathan Yates. I didn't use your name to try to score business deals. My girlfriend was a fool and tried to boast about me in front of her relatives. I'm very sorry, we didn't do it on purpose. Chloe Yates raised her eyebrow and asked, so this is why you were trying to puff yourselves up by using my name? Nathan Yates knew all too well just how Chloe Yates was as a person. If he didn't give her a satisfactory answer today, he'd truly be done for. Hurry up and apologize to Ms. Yates, Nathan Yates roared at his girlfriend. The latter looked up, only to see Finn Taylor, Yvette Larson, and Linda James looking at her with mockery in their eyes. They were rejoicing at her misfortune. Corinne Jameswo had initially intended to apologize through a tantrum. No, all I did was tell a white lie. I didn't do anything against the law. Why should I have to apologize? Besides, you're both Yates. Who knows if you're really related? Perhaps, you're even her elder. It was truly a frightening thing when women lost all rationality. It had been no big deal to begin with, but now that Corinne James had said such a thing, there was no going back. Nathan Yates had truly offended Chloe Yates. Slap. A resounding slap landed on Corinne James's cheek. Nathan Yates could no longer hold it in. I have to resolve this matter here and now. Otherwise, I would be sentenced to death. Nathan Yates's slap woke Corinne James from her trance. Kneel down and apologize to Ms. Yates. Corinne James was reluctant, but she had no other choice. Anyway, She had already humiliated herself in front of Yvette Larson's family whether or not she kneeled. As such, she chose to compromise. Thud, Corrine James fell to the ground. Before she could say a word, Chloe Yates strode off. Disdain. That was how disdainful she was. She didn't even want to hear an apology. If someone else had done that, Corrine James probably would have thrown a tantrum. However, she didn't dare to do so toward Chloe Yates. In the end, she kneeled for a good 5 minutes until her knees swelled up before she hobbled away. She had wanted to show off to Yvette Larson during this shopping trip. However, not only had she not been able to do that, but she had even embarrassed herself completely. Corrine James was no longer in the mood for shopping. She picked up her $1,000 bag and left. Of course, Yvette Larson didn't rub salt in her cousin's wound and merely followed behind her. Not long after, Finn Taylor caught up with them. In his hand was a large shopping bag. "What's that?" Yvette Larson asked out of curiosity. "The bag I bought for you." Corrine James was still fuming, and her blood boiled when she heard her cousin's husband say that. "Finn Taylor, don't tell me you bought that $50,000 bag." "No, it only cost me $25,000. Corrine James sneered. "I knew you wouldn't be able to afford that $50,000 bag." "Yvette, stop pretending. Didn't you say that you live in a mansion worth tens of millions? Why can't you afford a $50,000 bag?" But Corrine James had never stopped to consider that her bag had cost only $1,000. It was like night and day when compared to a $25,000 bag. "Take it out and show us what kind of bag it is." Corrine James snatched the bag over from Finn Taylor as she said so. That stunned Yvette Larson. How could there be such shameless people in this world? Why does she have to snatch someone else's things? Corrine James opened the shopping bag, and the sight stunned her. The $25,000 bag that Finn Taylor was talking about was actually that $50,000 bag. She was at a loss for words, and then she seemed to have thought of something. She laughed. "Finn Taylor, oh Finn Taylor. You're such a fool. You must have bought a $25,000 bag and switched it for this when the shop assistant wasn't paying attention. Do you know just how powerful Chloe Yates is? Aren't you afraid of getting your limbs broken when she finds out about this?" Finn Taylor was speechless. What is she talking about? "I bought this. Didn't Chloe Yates say that she'd give me a free bag earlier? I didn't want a free bag, so they gave me a 50% discount instead." Corrine James had heard Chloe Yates's words too, but she still refused to believe him. "That's impossible. Chloe Yates was just joking. Do you really think she was being serious? I really wonder if you stole the money you're spending today. Come, let's bring this bag back. If Chloe Yates finds out about it, she'll push the blame to Nathan. Can you bear that responsibility when the time comes?" Corrine James was really a fool, but Nathan Yates was sure of what she had just said. She's right. No good ending will come out of stealing from Chloe Yates. Finn Taylor is just trying to drag us down with them. "No, take this back." Even Nathan Yates tried to drag Finn Taylor back. Finn Taylor flung the couple away. "Do you really think that I stole this bag?" Corrine James sneered. "Isn't that the truth? Fine, I can go back and verify it with you, but what would you do if I really bought this bag?" "You bought the bag? That's impossible. If you really bought the bag, I'll kowtow to everyone in your family and treat all of you with full respect. What do you think of that?" Linda James was older than Henry James, and Yvette Larson was older than Corrine James too. Logically speaking, it was only right for them to be respectful to their family. Yet, Corrine James had always thought herself better than her cousin and had never treated the latter respectfully. Now, she was willing to put this on the line. "Fine." Finn Taylor glared at Corrine James. He had already gotten annoyed by the latter's attitude toward his wife, so he naturally wasn't going to let it go now that he had a chance. With that, the two families strode back to the boutique. Seeing that Chloe Yates was no longer around, Corrine James was emboldened. She slammed the counter and shouted, "What are you guys doing? Don't you know that you've been robbed?" "We've been robbed." The shop assistants were stunned. This was no small matter. If it were true, they'd have to take full responsibility for it. Corrine James pointed at Finn Taylor and then at the bag in his hand. "Someone stole a $50,000 bag from your store, but none of you are doing anything. What do you think Ms. Yates will do to you?" The shop assistants shot each other confused looks. What's going on? Didn't they just buy that bag? Why are they now saying that he's stolen it? Have they lost their minds? A shop assistant couldn't help but say in confusion, "But he bought that bag." The moment Corrine James heard those words, she was stumped. "You must be joking. He can't possibly afford that bag." The shop assistant pointed at the records and said, "Our records are still here." Disgruntled, Corinne James marched up to the cashier. In the end, she clearly saw a $25,000 transaction as solid evidence staring right back at her. Finn Taylor had bought that bag. Okay, you'd better kneel down now. Finn Taylor waved and pointed to the ground. It was only then that Corinne James thought of the bet she had made earlier. Good job, Yvette, you must have arranged everything. Did you give him money to do this? I'm your cousin. Are you very happy to embarrass me? Why do you have to embarrass your own relatives? I can treat you respectfully if you want, it doesn't matter. But have you thought about how you've destroyed our relationship by doing this? Corinne James went off on her rant, clearly not wanting to keep to her word. Corinne James, I didn't give Finn any money, nor did I arrange for this. Besides, you were the one who dragged him over, and you were the one who offered to bet with him. Did I ever force you to do anything? Corinne James knew that her cousin was speaking the truth, but she was never going to admit defeat. Just then, Henry James spoke up. Yvette, what do you mean? You make it sound as though our family has been very stingy toward you. You've been staying at our house ever since coming to Los Angeles. Why, our family has treated you so well, but we've now become the bad guys. Besides, it's obvious what's happened. Do you think that piece of trash would have been able to afford such an expensive bag if you didn't give him any money? We're family, so shouldn't we get along harmoniously? Your family rented a BMW and a villa, and you're even buying such an expensive bag now. Why must you put on a show in front of us? Since you're so rich, why don't you just buy all the bags in this boutique? Henry James's logic was even stranger. He clearly absolved their family of all responsibility and made it sound as though it was Yvette Larson's family that had started this whole mess. Oh, pack them up then. Wrap all the bags here up. Finn Taylor placed his credit card on the counter as he casually said that. Henry James had only been trying to force his niece to admit to her mistake. Never in his life would he have expected her family not to admit to their mistake but take it even further. What do you mean by this, Yvette Larson? Are you trying to flaunt your wealth to us? Are you trying to humiliate your uncle? Corinne James was fuming too. Dad, don't bother about him. I've never seen such a disrespectful person. Let them flaunt their wealth if they want to. These bags will cost $2 to $3 million at the very least. Do you think they'll be able to afford it? If they can really afford it, I'll kill myself right here. This day next year, you can all celebrate my death anniversary. For the sake of her dignity, Corinne James wasn't holding back. The shop assistants worked tirelessly to wrap up all the bags and calculate the final cost. Yvette Larson couldn't help but frown as she watched the shop assistants doing so. It's such a waste that Finn is buying me so many bags at once. Seeing her cousin's expression, Corinne James mistook it for fear and guilt that they couldn't afford it. The latter couldn't help but rejoice. Finally, a shop assistant walked over an hour later. Hello, sir. The total is $2.98 million. Do you really want to buy everything? The shop assistant was taken aback. Even she hadn't expected the total to be so high. By card, hearing the number, Finn Taylor was even slightly disappointed. It's too low to truly stun the James family. The shop assistant picked up his card and walked over to the cashier. At that moment, the Larson family and James family stared at the cashier expectantly, unblinking. They were all anticipating the final result. Beep. Transaction of $2.98 million successful. When that beep sounded, Corinne James was dumbfounded. Finn Taylor actually bought an entire boutique's worth of bags. Finn Taylor put away his card and asked the shop assistant, "Oh right, do you know if anyone sells coffins around here? She said that she'd kill herself right here. I don't have anything for her, so I thought I'd give her a coffin." Finn Taylor provoked Corinne James. The latter glared at the former and lashed out. "You're the one who should go to hell." She then turned to her cousin, her words filled with spite. "Yvette Larson, do you really think you'll be able to get me down just like that? Do you think that you'll be respected just because Finn Taylor did that? Everyone in the James family from grandma to a 3-year-old toddler knows that Finn Taylor is nothing but a piece of trash. You must have taken that money from your company. I heard Weston Shaw say that you became the CEO of your company. I never thought that you'd be so bold. I'll definitely report you to the Larson family. Just wait and see, I'll make sure you go to jail." Henry James's expression was sour too. "Linda James, look at your daughter. She just had to flaunt her wealth to show off her sense of superiority over my daughter. We're family, so why do you have to do that? But since you don't think of us as your relatives, you can scram from our family. We don't have relatives like you." Henry James was full of self-righteousness. He had never considered whether Yvette Larson was truly the one trying to one-up her cousin or whether it was his own daughter Corinne James. With that, Henry James's family stomped off. It felt like their entire family had been humiliated 100 times over. Wait for next part.